You guys know you like the long intro version. I feel like I don't play it enough. Play all the short ones. So we have special guests backstage right now. I don't really have a lot of announcements. I got a few things going on. You guys already know the launch for Archaix Underground is a wild success. We're very close to 2,100 now participants. It's 7 days free trial. We added three new spaces last night: astrology, tarot, and unusual sky phenomena in your neck of the woods. Similar to what MB333 does on his channel. Hey, Min Vi, how you doing, man? So Chuck and I have been backstage chopping it up, just talking about different stuff. We actually have a lot in common. I was really surprised. We have a lot in common as far as background goes, as our upbringing. But yeah, there's no other. I really don't have a lot. I mean, here's another one of my new shirts. You guys know I got a whole bunch of new shirts on the Archaix Shopify. Big John made sure I had a whole stack of them to wear. I'll probably do a shirt commercial later. But yeah, without further ado, let's Chuck Swindoll in here. Chuck Swindoll Jr.
Hey, y'all.
Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm really honored.
Yeah, it's an awesome community. You're on by popular demand.
Right on.
I have a list of people. You're pretty close to the top. Different. Now, I asked my community a few weeks ago. I just did an open live video, a freestyle. I just said, hey man, I'm looking for some people to come on my channel and talk about what they do, talk about what their passions are, what's their trajectory, and a lot of people on X and on YouTube said I need to holler at you. And I mean, you and I have exchanged a couple messages on Twitter, but never any more than that. I really didn't know much about you until I opened up your YouTube and I saw a video with 1.3 million. I said, I don't have anything like that. That's a hell of an accomplishment. 1.3 million people watched this video you did a year ago. That is impressive.
Thank you, sir. I'm very honored. Thank you. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. I started the Khazarian Mafia series, The God Eaters, just along the lines of what I was doing. I'm here to help try and widen perspective of people, to try and help people escape the claws of religion and indoctrination, and to take on a different perspective as we move forward now into what I'm seeing as a great awakening. And not everybody sees it that way, but I definitely see things happening right now for a reason. And I agree with the whole idea that we're in some kind of mathematical anomaly, and that we are we've been kept from knowing some of the most important details of what it means to be a human being. And so I'm here to just kind of shake things up a bit. I'm not here to say that I'm right, or I'm not here to say that I'm the end-all authority, but I am here to say that I've had some experiences in my life, and I want to share those with others, and I want to help others as much as I can not have to go through what I did to learn the things that I've learned, though it's very important to endure. But I definitely want to bring a message that's unusual and helps just shake things up in people's minds, especially those who haven't really been on this awakening thing, quote unquote, for a while. There's a lot of newbies, and I want to be sort of one of the first people that hopefully they interact with in my videos and so forth, to just help them to see the world differently, because it's very different than the way that we were raised. And I know you're very aware of that. So I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to be on your show and to be exposed to some of your viewers that maybe don't know me. And yeah, I love this opportunity. I'm really excited. I'm going to be presenting some stuff on the Khazarian Mafia today, their history, why the world, how the world became the 1984 that it is. And they're a key element to that. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it's all about. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree on anything, because at its core, no matter what type of world we live in, no matter how we define the world we live in, no matter what our perceptions of the world are that we live in, this is a human experience first before anything else. And it's what you're doing is not an easy road. You identify as an iconoclast. So this is another similarity between you and I. It's the iconoclast is not someone who is welcomed by the awake or by those asleep. The idol smasher is not welcome anywhere. So it's I get it, man. It's a lonely road. It's a lonely road you've chosen, man. So
yeah,
kudos to you.
Right on. It seems that eventually the iconoclast eventually pisses off everyone. I've even had folks that really liked me, and all of a sudden I hit a subject matter that they're not ready to release from, and I'll strike a nerve, and I'm an instant enemy. So it's interesting. It's interesting, the crowd that goes along with this. I love my chat. I do a weekly show every Saturday, and it's always interesting to hear the perspectives and backgrounds of folks as they comment in the chat. I love it. I love seeing the development of the human organism, the human collective. And I'm very excited to be a part of this movement. And yeah, dude, I'm excited to present this stuff.
Well, it is an awakening. Yeah, it's as you know, backstage we had a little small chat. It's there is a minority awakening, and I believe, and it's just my vantage point that I think it's always going to be a minority. I think the collective itself has a role to play. It's almost like the difference between primes and non-primes. The non-prime numbers are the only ones that are motive. They're the ones that you can do things, add, subtract, multiply, divide. You can do all kinds of magic with the non-prime numbers, but the prime numbers are fixed. They're immobile. They're immovable numbers. So they're like the backfield to everything else that can move. And it's almost like the awakened soul is like the non-prime number, but it requires the unawake. It requires the collective, which is the masses, in order for originality and in order for maturity to fully develop. Because if you don't know what it's like, if you can't observe a whole bunch of souls that are absolutely blind and asleep, how would you even know that you're awake?
Yeah, it's exactly. The contrast is essential. And I talk about that a lot in my videos, in that it is contrast that brings about the world. I mean, you can't see light without the darkness, and vice versa. And it's funny like that. Our whole world is built in that way, and that you need a contrasting aspect in order to germinate a new one. And the whole idea of gender and the male and female stuff, which we've been going through in my Saturdays with Rosicrucianism, you know, it all begins to really make common sense. And I think that that's really key here, is to remain as grounded as possible, and to try and base the philosophy, base what you're presenting to folks in a palatable way. And like what you're talking about here, through contrast, it's a really good way to begin to see things in their holistic sense. And so, yeah, man, I'm definitely down with that whole idea. And I completely agree with you. I do think that in many ways, we will remain the minority for quite a while. And this is tough information. And like you just said, it's a lonely path. I mean, the path of the awakened individual, and the one who's going to set their own way and take the world for what they see it as, you know, that's not the popular view. You know, everyone wants to sort of in many ways agree on things, and the iconoclast kind of stands in the way of that, and it becomes lonely. And you know, you lose friends as they, you know, as you get further and further away from the accepted normality, your friends get further and further away from you. And that's really what I've experienced. And tragically, you know, it starts to come between family, not in an angry way, but in just a, you know, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about way, and just don't really see things that way. And it's really changed. When I got into this thing, I never, ever expected the relational changes that I've experienced. That was totally unexpected, because I thought when I was going into it, I'm like, well, if I can see this and it's so obvious to me, it's going to be obvious to my friends and family. I mean, that's clear. And you start talking to them about this stuff, and it's just, no thanks. And that's really a lot of what I've gotten. I'm, you know, I was born in, or I was raised in Southern California for 20 years in the same house. So my friendship base and so forth was pretty solid. I mean, I knew the same people in kindergarten that I knew in high school. And
Wow.
so, you know, all of my friends were like that. I'd known them my whole life. And as soon as I went off the map, left Christianity, left religion all entirely, and completely took on this alternate idea of the world, it's just been, you know, further and further distancing. And so those of you that are watching this, that are, I don't know, just getting into it or just starting to realize the world isn't what it seems, just be ready for a lot of meditation alone time, because you're going to alienate yourself from everyone and everything that you've ever known. Because once you tap into this knowledge, you can't deny it. If you're a person who wants to know the truth and you want to know the real history and so forth, when you start to get a taste of that, I mean, you'll abandon everything to continue down the way of truth and the way of light. And so, you know, be ready. It's not an easy course, and it's going to require quite a bit of self-motivation and self-responsibility to continue down the path, because it's tough. It's not the common, it's not what everyone wants to believe and think and see. They really want to just stay with things as they are. They don't want to change. And so, yeah, when you become the different one, the iconoclast, there's baggage that goes along with that. And I mean, I actually just talked about that this last Saturday, and when I had someone ask me about the loneliness, and I encouraged them to take it as an asset, take it as more time to meditate, take it as more time to keep your focus and not be distracted, and try and make this difficult portion, this lonely portion, an asset to your journey, rather than something that's impeding on you or impinging you from continuing forward. So yeah, it's a big deal. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's the what you're essentially defining here are the difference in values between the awakened and the collective. I mean, you can see that the disparity is really noticeable. Like if a 21-year-old girl, model beautiful girl, does a video on how to more properly paint her eyes and do her makeup, she will have 200,000 views in about 3 hours. Yeah. Whereas somebody getting on YouTube and doing a very spiritual video, you're not going to get that traction. It's not. No. People, it's going to be a small minority of souls that want to hear the spiritual, which is interesting because you and I have the same background. Puritanical Southern Baptist for me, but I was also raised in a home by a church administrator, and everybody knows your story. Everybody knows you're Chuck Swindoll Jr. So you have the exact same religious conditioning background, and to break free from that is that's a hell of an accomplishment, man.
It's tough, man. I'm very thankful. I'm one of the rare people that is thankful for contracting the disease cancer, because cancer really became my greatest teacher. And though it was trying to kill me every day and end my life, it became the entity that broke me out of the stagnant thinking that I had been locked in my whole life, and was likely one of the major reasons why I did develop cancer, was just the stagnancy of belief that I had been locked in since I was 4. And I was raised Christian. My father is probably one of the largest Christian influences of this generation. And that was my father. And so like you, when we were talking off stage, you mentioned how you're going to church 3, 4, 5 times a week. You're involved in different programs. And you really, I mean, that's really how the church really gets its claws into you, and that you spend so much time in it and doing it. You really don't take the time to see a world that is outside the Christian world. And when you're raised and indoctrinated in Christianity, I mean, seeing outside of that bubble is impossible until something in your life so impinges and impacts upon you that you're willing to be look in a different direction. The impact of the catastrophe is so great that it forces you to change your philosophy, because it was your old philosophy that brought you to that place of catastrophe. And that was really one of the lessons that cancer taught me, was that there's a reason why you're sick, and you need to find out why you're sick. And then that's going to begin to help you understand why you're in the position that you're in now. And you have to make a conscious choice on your own part when you've been indoctrinated to begin to leave that space. That's a conscious decision that you make, because you feel, or I felt, that I had to, because it was the way I was living and the way I was raised that made me sick, that contracted cancer. And so, yeah, man, to leave a society like that, a cult, I like to call Christianity a cult like that is no small task, because there's no exit strategy. You're never to leave. It's like the mob. Once you get involved, you're never to leave. And if you leave, you're going to pay for that. And so it's really
it's like YouTubers popping up talking about we're ex-CIA. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. I've been called an ex-CIA agent many times in my work. Yeah. And there's a
I'm not talking about the people who accuse you of it. I'm talking about the ones that actually claim they're ex-CIA. And it's like, to me, it's comical. It's like, come on, man. You're ex? Really?
Yeah. Once you're in the CIA, you never leave.
Yeah, man.
CIA always.
So
CIA.
I want to comment on the cancer. So what you just told me is more evidence in my arsenal of just how spiritual we are, because cancer, like so many other things, is a shock to the avatar. And it's often these shocks we get to the avatar. Like for me, it was a motorcycle accident, but it's the shock to the avatar that seems to awaken the spirit within to see the world differently, to process information differently, and to understand that we are more than our avatars. We're actually more than we suppose ourselves to be. So you talking about the cancer was what kind of shocked you and woke you up. And here in Archaix, I'm always making the distinction, explaining to people, man, it's most of life is spiritual. And when you catch yourself living in a reactive mindset, it's because you've fallen back into the collective. You are now responding to the wants of the avatar, and to where society and culture in the outside world is basically funneling your avatar to be. And you're living a reactive mindset instead of a creative one. You're receiving instead of broadcasting. Yeah. And so that's what came to mind when you said cancer was part of your awakening process, because cancer doesn't affect the spirit, it affects the avatar. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it unexpected, and I think that's one of the most common ways that folks awaken, is that they never expected to. They never expected to see the world any different. And when you've got that shell of indoctrination, that the light really can't shine, it always shines through the lens of the indoctrination, and it's really scary to leave that shell because it's protective. I mean, it keeps you isolated in this very small mindset, and you don't have to grapple with some pretty tough to answer, often unanswerable questions, because that religion, that shell that you've been indoctrinated into, just simply doesn't let the light escape. It doesn't let free thought escape. You're a bot, and I think that was one of the toughest things to accept, was that I was a bot. I mean, I've been raised and indoctrinated in a very tiny or minority belief system in comparison to the truth of the world. And it really makes you, it made me very crazy, because you refuse to see any other world. And so when folks come along that are not in the shell that you're in, you appear to be a fanatic. And I was definitely a fanatic. And that's, again, a reactive position where you're taking all of this stuff that's placed into your brain, and you're just parroting it back out to people, usually threatening. And it's not very cohesive to growth. And so, it takes it took a foreign experience for me, which was getting terminal cancer. It took that to wake me up. And that is very difficult. And you just really don't realize it until you're in it. It was in many ways, by the time I realized what I was thinking and starting to subscribe to, it's just too late. You can't unsee. And it's a catastrophe on your life, because you have to leave everything that you've built. I mean, I left a solid job. I had all of my retirement set. I was working for my father at his church where he was serving, so my job was very secure. And you begin to find, at least I found, that the further I got down the path of awakening, the less the security was important, and the more the idea of insecurity became the focal point, because that's the person that can still learn. When my bowl is full and I know it all and I've got it all figured out, I got the spiritual thing worked out, I'm worshiping the right God, I'm believing the right system, I've gotten my sins forgiven, and so on and so forth. when you're in that space, man, it's very secure. You think you got it all worked out, and when you realize that you don't, and you realize that actually you've completely gone down a dead end, it's extremely frightening, and it takes a whole lot of courage and a whole lot of dedication and knowledge to continue down and not just fold. I've known people that have begun to awaken, but it just got too much for them, and they weren't willing to go as far as necessary, and so they cowered. And so, yeah, my role here, I feel like one of my major roles is to help bring about courage for people, because it's a courageous act to break out of the indoctrination. It takes a courageous person to do that, and I really want to encourage folks to do that, because as human beings, I mean, we're to be adventurers, you know, we're wonders in a wonderment. And the whole idea isn't to tie life in, but to release to it and, you know, jump onto the rapids and see where they take you and courageously go down that road. And that's really what it's about right now. And folks need to find it in themselves to think differently, because nobody can do it for you. I always talk about that in my shows, the self-responsibility that goes along with knowledge. And, you know, you have a role when you get more and more filled with the light to share that light with others. And again, that's a courageous act, the act of the hermit. And so, yeah, man, this is a big deal, and it's multitudinous. Before this show, I was receiving texts and messages from people saying I needed to cover this, that, and the other thing. And my thought is, as you know, Jay, the whole conspiratory world is so big, you could never sit down and outline the whole thing. I could never outline all the Khazarian Mafia in 2 hours. I mean, I've got 8-10 hours now in videos, and I still have only scratched the surface with what I've done. It's so big, and it ties into everything. So, yeah, trying to make this bite size and trying to make this quote unquote believable enough to get people to pursue it is the key. Because they have to do the work. As you know, Jay, you yourself have to do the work. You got to read the books. You got to watch the lectures. You got to walk into the space. No one can do it for you. And that's what this is about. So, yeah, I'm hoping that today we can instigate some folks to continue down this road and to find out for themselves just how corrupt the world has become. And it is our responsibility as the human collective to shine light to others and be a part of this awakening and moving away from the corrupted world.
Well, so, I do want to say that what you don't cover in this video, listen, people need to go watch that. I mean, I was impressed. I mean, my only criticism of your video that got 1.3 million was that when you were talking about the control structure pyramid and it showed each tier.
Yeah.
You never left the pyramid up on the screen long enough for me to look at it.
Oh, shoot,
so,
man, sorry.
So just long enough for what you said was that tier, and then I couldn't see the rest to compare it with other tiers while you were speaking. So no worries. You ain't got to change that video. I screenshot it. I got it now. But it was great. It's a good video. It's very informative.
Thank
and
you,
yeah, I would like one of my moderators to go to his channel and put the link to the part 1, the God Eaters.
Yeah.
And go ahead and put it in the immortalize it right here in the chat. So
right on.
So when people watch this video, the link will already be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Jay. Yeah, there's 2 videos on YouTube. One is red, one is blue, part 1 and part 2. And then as I continued down the road into mind control and the CIA, YouTube immediately deleted those videos. So those videos are available on Rumble. There are 5 videos total that I've made so far. Yeah. In the Khazarian Mafia. And I've got 2 more literally in the hopper ready to go. I just have never had the time to present them, but I got 2 more going really deep into the brain aspect of it and how the CIA uses vibration and different types of means and ways to coerce the people who listen to their messages and the people who watch the media and so forth. There's a real logic to all of that. It is not happenstance. And so I cover that in the 3 videos that are on my Rumble page. But yes, the best place to start, Jay, is right where you just pointed everyone, and that is part 1, video 1 of the God Eaters on my YouTube page. That is the best place to start, because it really lays the groundwork out and begins to open up the idea that the world is not as you have been taught it to be. It actually is the opposite in many ways to the
So
way.
one thing I want my community to hear. You and I discussed something backstage. We're not going to go into details, but after putting up the God Eaters 2 videos and then releasing some more content, you were literally told to back off or they're going to delete your channel. And they had communicated to you, look, it's enough. So I want to address this, not on what you said, but on the scenario around such a practice, because I know YouTube deletes channels. I know that, and they gave you fair warning, but this is something that I have addressed with my community, because people have asked me, says, damn, Jason, on your hats off videos, you go pretty hard sometimes. And on your freestyle Q&As, you answer questions, even though there's pretty toxic subjects. Well, you scared of getting taken down and all that. And my answer has always been that I don't know what compels me to move forward the way I do, but I see that there is a resistance in the field. Not a threat that I'm going to be censored, but it seems to be that we have a benefactor. Because if we didn't, they would have just took those 2 God Eaters videos down just like that. There ain't a damn thing Chuck Swindoll could have done about it. So why did they leave the videos up? So many other things that I've done too. I question. I like, why did, if you guys are so opposed to me sharing this data, why are you leaving my channel up? Why is the video? So I've come up with this idea, Chuck, that, this is a contract-based experience. They're always trying to get us to tacit agreement, try to agree to this. And our behavior is tacit agreement. This is why we fall into these feedback loops. And it's just like the whole COVID narrative. I says they didn't actually put a gun to your head and make you do that, but by tacit agreement, because of all the threats that were implied or valid, a lot of people signed up for it to save their jobs, be able to put food on the table, whatever. But it's still a contract-based reality. And I often wonder about this. What's your thoughts on that? On the fact that there is a benefactor force. We do have help in the field, or we would have been mowed over a long time ago.
Yeah, this goes right into the question, and maybe, Jay, you can give me some insight on this, because I still have yet to talk to somebody who give me any decent answer. But I go back to how do I form this? I take on the notion that the great awakening that humanity is in right now was instigated, that it wasn't just a happenstance organic thing, and then all of a sudden, and a few years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, there just became this massive great awakening beginning to happen, and just this entirely change in movement of the direction of the collective. And I, to this day, wonder exactly who is instigating this. What force? Is it an entity? Is it a force? Is it just spiritual aspect? What is it? Is it the collective unconscious? What is instigating, and what instigated this? And exactly what you just said, Jay, exactly is, why did they leave? Why has YouTube had that part 1 God Eaters video in some kind of loop? And to this day, I mean, years after I've released it, I still am getting emails from people that have just seen it. So it's on some kind of loop. And I often get a note from someone that says, hey, I just hopped onto YouTube, and it listed suggestions. YouTube listed suggestions for them, and they said your video was in their suggestions. And so this is YouTube, the enterprise, suggesting to people to watch this video. And it's like, that makes no sense, because just months later, when I released the 3rd in the video set, I get a letter from them that's totally different than any other letter I've gotten from them. Before, I would get an email, and they would basically say, hey, you're under a 90-day watch. We put your channel on lockout for 90 days. Don't do it again. And this one was totally different. It was a letter that said, we've seen the video that you've posted. If you post it again, or anything about CIA mind control, or anything about that subject matter, we'll shut down your channel, and you won't even have a chance to have a rebuttal to it. You will not be able to get it back. We will shut it down and it will be gone forever. Do not ever post that again. And they still have left the Khazarian Mafia Part 1 video on my page. They left that one up. They still have not taken that down, nor Part 2, the 2 that I did. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And it would seem like there's some type of energy, some type of force that is allowing this stuff to come out in sort of this piecemealed way. Like it's letting out little bits and pieces, like some of the videos like you just mentioned that you've posted. It's like, dude, you're going hard. Like, this stuff is not allowed. I know people that have been shut down for saying a very similar thing, but yet they let little pieces through like that. And to me, I don't believe in the idea of coincidence. And I think that this is moderated, like it's being leaked little by little, like just little pieces are being let out into the collective so that we don't have this collapse, but we begin to have.
Hey, listen, I know I'm not theorizing, because I don't know if on your channel if you're in the YouTube partnership program, but I am. And even though I do not allow ads in the middle of my videos and all that, and YouTube's tried to get me to do it, I just won't do it. So Archaix is prime real estate. And there's like Ancient Aliens and Gaia and all these groups I really don't get along with, forbidden knowledge of Billy Carson. They pay YouTube to put ads in front of in front of and behind my videos. And I'm a critic of all three of them. You know what I mean? But in the middle of my videos, I don't allow the ads. So it's called mid-rolls. But being a member of the YouTube partner program, I have people in YouTube that are assigned to Archaix. And once a month, we do a Zoom. And in the Zoom, when I first started doing this, it was a YouTube attorney. It was a YouTube like IT guru, and then somebody in marketing. And there was 3 of them every time. And then I graduated to another tier. And then I had, like, you can call them a handler, I guess, even though they're not handling me. But it's one person assigned to my deal. And they show me all, because YouTube behind the scenes, there are hundreds of settings. You can get lost in the settings. There's so much. So they give me monthly tutorials, 20 to 30 minutes a month. And I go through there and they show me how to activate newer stuff. But the reason I'm telling you this is because for 3 years now, I've been doing these monthly deals with YouTube, and I'm not trying to hide my concerns. I ask them straight out. I says, well, you guys don't have any problem with any of my content? I said, I have a unique class of videos that I've literally watched the views go down. And none of my other videos does it. And they said, well, what are you talking about? I said, listen, I got videos on history, on chronology, on spiritual stuff, a bunch of videos on the Phoenix phenomenon. And I never have any problems. I never see this, but I have about 30 videos about the Nemesis X chronology, and those videos do terrible, and yet it's one of the most fascinating topics to my community. They're always asking me to do more on Nemesis X, and yet those are the poorest videos, and I've literally watched the tickers go down, not up. So they said, well, we don't have any problem with your content. I says, well, I have another series called Hats Off, where I kind of go deep on different Jewish intrigues and history and all that. And they told me straight up, says, we don't have any problem with your content at all. None at all. So I just took it. That's it. So I kind of just got carefree and just said, you know what? I just talk about anything now. Shit.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah. I look forward to getting to the day when I've got my own website and so forth. And then, I never even have to worry about any of the censorship or any of that stuff. I still am trying to walk a fairly fine line.
I really commend that, and I know a lot of really high quality content creators go to Rumble and go to Odyssey and go that. But the truth remains is I may end up doing that in the future as well. But YouTube has cornered the market. YouTube, more people are on YouTube than anywhere, all the other platforms combined. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the international reach of YouTube is beyond belief. I mean, they are, like you just said, they have completely cornered the market, and you really can't do on any other channel what you can do on, as far as reach is concerned, as YouTube. I mean, it's remarkable. And that was really one of the situations. I mean, that was the situation I was in 6-8 months ago when they really threatened me. it was like, well, okay, do I just completely abandon YouTube and go to Rumble? And I thought that can't be the thing to do. I've got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube at the moment. At that time I did. And I'm like, I can't ignore that. That's a huge amount of people. And to just throw it all away and begin again on Rumble, which doesn't have nearly the reach that YouTube does, it was like, well, I'm going to have to make this work. I'm going to have to be smart about this. I'm going to have to be wise about this and just carefully walk that way, because I want to be able to reach people. I mean, I tried the Patreon thing for a while and that was fine. But it's like when you've only got, 10, 15, 20 subscribers for months on end, you're doing a ton of work for just a tiny little handful of people, and it's not really going to reach that far. And so you have to figure out ways to maintain your reach, but at the same time, be honest, be truthful with where you're really at as far as your belief systems or subscriptions are concerned. And so, yeah, man, it's a fine line, but I'm encouraged to hear what you just said. And it helps me understand why maybe some of my stuff has stayed on that wouldn't have stayed on normally. So I'm thrilled to hear that, and maybe I can begin to expand further. Well,
there's other groups that I support, like the Paranormies. They're smaller. They talk about some really, really, really toxic, stuff going on in the field. But so do Rise Above in the UK, and we were discussing with them that it's very noticeable that YouTube has lightened up on their censorship quite a bit. They've lightened up. I think it's because so many people have abandoned and gone to other platforms. So
probably true. Yeah. It's certainly not because they have a good heart. It certainly always goes back to money and reach, for sure. Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with consciousness.
I mean, I don't know so much about money. I used to believe that, Chuck, but we're dealing with Fortune 500 company owned BlackRock type companies. So they already have all the money in the world, and they can print all. I think the whole money deal is like an illusion. I think it's more of control. It's we're dealing with entities that don't need any money. YouTube doesn't need any money. They get so much money from advertisers. There's so many companies all over the world that are just throwing money at YouTube to show ads. They don't need any money. It's I think it has everything to do with molding human perception, creating a digital world that is very different from the actual world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And some of it for me might be the fact that I'm not monetized. And so I can usually play music that if I was monetized, I couldn't. And I'm able to do some things that if I was monetized, I couldn't. That might have somewhat to do with it also. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying there. And that, yeah, they don't need money. But I do think it influences. At the end of the day, greed is endless. But yeah, it's probably not the finality. And that's what makes it so funny, Jay, because if it's not about the money for YouTube, and it's about, exposing different ideas and creative content and so forth, why are they allowing this kind of thing to be exposed? And maybe it's because we are in the middle of transition and that's all just going by the wayside. So it's becoming irrelevant the further down the line we go. So I don't know exactly what the reasoning would be and why that stuff wouldn't be sponsored. But I do know that just 6-8 months ago, last November, so it's a little bit longer than that now, almost a year ago. I mean, they were all on me. And so I just simply haven't gone back there again. And that's the reason I didn't stream this live today on my YouTube channel, because I didn't know exactly what I would be saying and wasn't sure if it would go over well. But we'll see what happens. And I am encouraged, though, that more content is being allowed and that my stuff at least has been able to be allowed on there, at least some of it.
Well, they could have been a lot harder on you, though, simply because, personal identity has a lot to do with public, your reach, So you are the son of a man that is known worldwide, and he was known for 50, 60 years. So it's that makes you much more of a threat than me.
Well, I don't know about that. You are very knowledgeable in this stuff, but yeah, my father's lineage and legacy. I mean, it's a big deal. My father, I mean, he was the center of Christianity. Him and Billy Graham and James Dobson back in the 80s. I mean, I mean, those were the dudes that were basically leading the whole front of Christianity. And so, yes, my father's impact has been incredible. I mean, I've got stories. The CIA tried to capture him. Anton LaVey personally contacted my father. I think he was hunting me, because when he contacted my father, I was pre-puberty and about 8 years old. So I was the perfect candidate for the kind of things that he was involved in. And so, yeah, my father has been in kind of the spotlight for a long time, back to the 70s, when he really made a name for himself from the ground up. My father, I mean, he came from nowhere. He's a country guy from Corpus Christi, Texas. And I mean, he wasn't known anywhere, and really on his own merit, with his own gifts and with his ability to exposit so effectively. I mean, he built it from the ground up right there from about 1971 forward. So, yeah.
I'm going to have to interject with "We Texans will surprise you."
True. Yeah. My dad is a very proud Texan. Very proud Texan.
That must have went off really strange in Southern California.
You know, it was a big change for my father. My father was pretty much Texas native, and, you know, that whole mindset, and going to SoCal, right there near the coast, right there in Hippieville. I mean, that was a big thing for my father, a huge risk taking on that church. First Evangelical Free Church in Fullerton, California, were the ones who gave him this big break there on Malvern Avenue in Fullerton. And he was right at the epicenter. They bought their first house for $59,900 right there in downtown Fullerton. I mean, I'm sure the house now is multiple millions, but it is amazing how different things were back then. Very different.
Well, my publisher's in San Diego. I go there once, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. I'm not really a fan of Southern California, but it is a nice little city. I can take it in small doses.
Yeah, it's nothing what it was. I mean, back in the day in the 70s, my sister and I used to ride down to Ralph's or Thrifty and get an ice cream cone. It was a lot different than it is now. It's very different than it was then. So, yeah.
So let's earlier we talked about Jordan Maxwell. I told you I was my publisher in San Diego. He had arranged for Jordan to get my first published book, Lost Scriptures of Giza, and what got me published in that book in 2006 was the fact is my source materials were very, very well covered and very unique. And Paul Tice he openly admitted, he said, "Man, I had never seen all this information on the pre-flood world, the Great Pyramid." He says, "I don't even know where you got all this data on the Great Pyramid. I see your bibliography, but a lot of these books I've never even heard of." And he says, but my chronology, he pulled a calculator out. He says, the math adds up. He says, this is just mind blowing. But I have somebody I want to run this by, because I've done about 200 radio interviews with this guy. And I said, well, who is he? He said, his name is Jordan Maxwell, and I've published some of his books. But more so, I have a box full of old VHS tapes of all of our radio interviews, because we used to do a radio show. I said, really? I said, yeah, well, let him check it out. So Jordan Maxwell looked at my book, Lost Scriptures of Giza, and told Paul Tice that, yeah, I would definitely want to work with this young man when he gets out of prison. We can do some chats, talks. We can work together, whatever. But this is something I would really like to pursue, because this is some fascinating material in this book. And I got out in 2016, but by that time his health was already waned, and Paul kept putting me on the back burner and put in the back, and just Jordan Maxwell never came out of it, and he passed away. But
that's a shame. What an honor, though, man. I mean, that's pretty high level there, and what an honor. Congratulations to you for reaching that kind of. I
appreciate it. There's a lot of people in the chat who have read that book. It's my first published book, but it's just one out of many now that I've done. But I mentioned that because in your video on your channel, you talked openly about Jordan Maxwell, quoted him 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So it's Jordan Maxwell. He was on it when it came to the New World Order, the unseen hand, the black nobility. Jordan Maxwell was on top of it.
Oh, his knowledge is unsurpassed. I mean, it is. And he was old school, man. That guy found that stuff out at the library. Like, that guy was old school research,
Yeah.
put your head in it and start reading and go for it. I mean, there was no internet, there was no shortcut or anything to any of this information. You had to go and arduously find it. And a lot of the books he even talked about, like he had to go to locations to find them. I mean, the guy was on it, and much respect for you for being able to reach his attention. I mean, that is enormous. So yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sorry you were ever unable to coordinate with him. That would have been amazing.
That's okay. I will tell you this. You might be a little jealous of this. So kind of tone it down, Chuck. Kind of tone it down. But my publisher is going to give me that box of VHS tapes, and I'm going to convert those into videos. But those are actual radio interviews between Paul Tice, my publisher, and George Maxwell. And they're unheard of. You can't find them anywhere anymore.
Gold. Please do the work, man. That's gold. That is pure gold. And yeah, to get that information out to the people would be a really good idea. Pure gold. Yeah. You want to get going on this? Do you want me to start the introduction for what I'm going to be talking about here today?
Absolutely. You have to remind me, which one do I open up first?
So it says Archaix Part 1. It's the one that's green, and it says the Gaudi. That's it. Yeah. That's the first slide. Now, the reason why I titled this "The God Eaters Reproclamation" is that this is sort of the Cliff Notes version of the Khazarian Mafia videos that I've already released. And what I tried to do when I put this together this week was to succinctly combine slides and information from my 5 videos that I've done already, and succinctly pull it into about a 50-page or 50-slide presentation. And what I've chosen to do, unlike all the other ones, and I did this mostly for the folks that have already seen all those videos, I've decided to open this one with the Phoenicians. When I first started presenting the Khazarian Mafia, I didn't have a good enough grasp of the Phoenicians. And my focus was more on the Amalechites, the Levant, and all the wars and so forth that were going on in the Levant between about 1800 BC and 300 BC. And right in that that meat of those events was really where I focused my last video, or my 5 videos. And so this one, we're going to be opening up with a really tight look at the Phoenicians. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish that they are basically the banking institution that we still to this day under maritime law are under. And they established this maritime law through the Mediterranean Sea dealings and being basically over all the trade and all that was happening coming out of the Silk Road. And they were, by then, were the epicenter of trade there on the Mediterranean Sea. And so my focus is to share their history, and then share the Amalekite history and the lineage of Noah and Esau and Eliphaz and these characters, which brought about this highly satanic group called the Canaanites. And how they, like the diaspora of the Jews, the Canaanites just spread throughout all of that region surrounding, not only in the Levant, but the surrounding regions of the Levant, as the Assyrians and the Babylonians and so forth came in. And these tribal wars that are going on in the Levant, and these smaller societies that have come out of the Canaanite enterprise, they're fighting it out. But then you have these massive individuals like the Hittites and the Assyrians that begin to move in. And these little tribal communities can't compete with communities that are forging steel. And as we know, the Hittites, and at that time they were basically perfecting the forging of steel, which became the tank for the Romans to take over the area. And so we're going to be looking at today the Phoenicians, and then as well as the lineage of the Levant and the Amalekites, and how these two groups, due to the Silk Trade Road and so forth, combined, unified their effort, and that became the front. The Khazarian Mafia combined from the Levant and the Caucasus Mountains, combined with the Phoenicians and the Mediterranean Sea folk who were wealthy and involved in trade, and bringing in the stuff from the Silk Roads, and how the Amalekites and so forth from the Caucasus Mountains sold those materials from the Silk Road down through the Mediterranean. And that's what basically brought such power and gold to the Khazarian Mafia, and then they moved into the West. So we're going to be talking about all of that today, to try to give everyone a basic synopsis of why the world is still to this day under maritime law, why this group is still in power and why they are still influencing the world to this day, thousands of years later. And I'm going to show everyone exactly the chronology of this. And then obviously, Jay, if you want to correct me anywhere where I'm screwing up or I've missed it, please let me know. I'm here to learn. I'm not a final authority on anything, and I don't see myself as a final authority.
No,
So
I'm gonna let you get your flow out. I do want to preface. You're basically talking in the chronological record. You were talking about what came out of what is known as the Ogygian deluge. After the Ogygian deluge in 1687 BC, which was caused by the Phoenix, by Typhon, it took about 200 years for the shipping guilds to restore their power all around the Mediterranean. And these are this whole story of Atlantis in the 13th century BC going against Athens at the exact same time that you're talking about, when the Hittites began manufacturing iron, and it changed the military orders. It changed the shipping guilds. It changed everything. But the period that you're talking about is this, after a cataclysm that is called the Ogygian flood, the Ogygian deluge, this period of time with the Phoenicians. Where my area of expertise comes in is not so much on this. I'm well versed on this, as much as can be from what I've read, but I have documented the 552 years before that cataclysm in what I refer to in my chronicon as the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. It was a worldwide shipping guild. They had total control, but they were completely wiped out in this Ogygian deluge. And coming out of the Ogygian deluge, then we had the Mycenaeans, we had the Minoans, we had the Libyans, because the Egyptians didn't have a navy. They relied on exporting the Cretans and the Libyans. And we had all this competition. And then all of a sudden, these Phoenicians enter the Mediterranean, and they just took over every single shipping guild. But this is all a little bit before the time period you're talking about. So
gotcha.
It's
gotcha. Fantastic. Yeah, great to hear that information. Okay, so if anybody wants the slides from the show, you can email me. That's my email. And if you want the actual slides for your own study and to look this stuff over, compare and critique, just shoot me an email, and I'll send you a PDF that'll contain all the slides, and you're welcome to do with it whatever you wish. There's no charge. There's no catch. You don't got to sign up to anything. I'm happy to simply provide the slides and information. No problem, no strings attached. And so I just wanted everyone to know that. Okay, my Khazarian Mafia talks are very heavily based in this document from Preston James, which talks about the secret history. And one of the first things I want to warn everybody about when I go into this stuff, this is secret history. This is not established, accepted history that your professor down at your local university is going to be like, yep, I totally understand the Khazarian Mafia. Yep, I totally they're not going to know about any of this stuff. And so this is a hidden mafia. This is secret history. You can't just hop on AI or Grok or something and say, hey, tell me about the Khazarian Mafia and get this whole list about them. You have to go out and research this stuff, find the interviews. A lot of the material that I talk about with the Satanism stuff comes out of Mark Passio and comes out of interviews of people who have experienced the whole SRA, satanic religious abuse, and or satanic. What is the SRA? Satanic, religious abuse, the abuse of the Satanists. And so I've listened to a number of interviews, specifically Jay Parker, who was a child who was brought into this mafia, and he was abused for years. I've got a quote from him with one of his abusers that said that they were from the Amalekites. They traced their lineage all the way back to the Amalekites. One of the things these abusers often do with the people that they're abusing is they like to boast about their history and how deep their lineage goes, that they are a part of. And what I wanted to ask you, Jay, do you know, or could you lead me somewhere that could help me find information about the lineage of Cain, that could help me understand and know, like when he went into Nod, who he was meeting up with, or is that just all fake and just simply metaphors, and that these people are just representations of energies rather than actual history? love to pick your brain on that sometime, not now, but sometime, to better understand and get a grasp of the history of the Khazarians. So I would just be curious about that from you. Another book that that is basic for this is this book here, Cannibalism, Blood Drinking, and High Adept Satanism by Kurt Barker. He was also ritualistically abused. That's what it is, satanic ritualistic abuse, sorry. He was ritualistically abused, had a handler. Most of the time, your hardcore abused kids that are in this, that are being used, have a handler. And they are programmed through sexual abuse, and they build schizophrenic personalities inside these children and then form relationship to the individual personalities that come out of the schizophrenia of the child. And then those act as controllers within the mind of the child. So if they have an agenda that they want that child to carry out, they'll program one of the personalities inside the child, and then that child will then carry out the act with certain trigger words. And so Kathy O'Brien is a big source of information when it comes to that. And she also is in my videos.
You're describing like Manchurian candidate type stuff.
Yes. Yes. And this is really where all the knowledge or a majority of the knowledge that the CIA uses in regards to mind control, this all comes out of, in my opinion, the Amalekites, the work of black magic, satanic magic, and programming people with hallucinogenic drugs, which was a specialty of the Amalekites. And it's my opinion that a lot of this mind control and brain programming tech comes out of the Levant, comes out of the Canaanites, comes out of the programming that they did on the people that they attacked. And so it's not young. This is all old information that's just being reused by our current rulers, quote unquote. And that link right there, I've checked my links, that link right there, as well as the link I presented here, that link right there, Veterans Today, and then as well as this link right here, leads you to PDFs or the file itself for free. So you can get this information without having to pay any subscription, without having to buy into anything. You can just hop on the web, and that will take you to those books, and you can, or the document, the Khazarian Mafia document, and you can read for yourself. Decide for yourself. Don't believe me. Go ahead and read for yourself. Do your own research. Make your own conclusions. I am simply here to instigate new thought, new ideas, new patterns, and then you do with it what you want. I am certainly not a final authority. Okay, so getting right into what's going on here. The present-day Khazarian Mafia, I like to call them the KM, knows that it cannot operate or exist without abject secrecy, and therefore has spent a lot of money having its history excised from the history books in order to prevent citizens of the world from learning about its evil beyond imagination that empowers them, the world's largest and oldest crime cabal. So like I said earlier, this is secret. This is hard to find information, or not as hard now with the internet, but it's been very hard to access, if not impenetrable. You can't access it up until recently, when I believe the Great Awakening has been instigated. This essay is an attempt to clarify the situation by exposing the Khazarian Mafia's hidden history, their patterns of behavior, and their methods of operation, so to render their true identity. It is of my opinion that the Luciferians, the seed of the KM, originally sourced from the Levant, specifically the Canaanites from the line of Canaan, the grandson of Noah, as well as possibly the hidden bloodline of Cain, the son of Lucifer and Eve. And I am falling more and more under the impression that that Eden was simply metaphors, that the characters are simply energies, and that it's been placed into actual history. I might be wrong in that, but I am beginning to veer away from the idea that this is actual history, that these are actually metaphors of this energy as it's being put into the community. And Jay, you and I could talk about that down the road. Members today of the KM are abused into the system and are used where they show gift. The true Luciferians have bloodline heritage, certainly, but the vast majority of the mafia is now composed of a consortium of people from many backgrounds, just like the Khazarians formed in the Caucasus Mountains from many horse-faring nomadic people long ago. This is a critical map that I like to use that was drawn by Dylan Monroe. And this basically shows the costumes that the KM have worn so that you would never know of them. So the pharaohs, Babylonians, the Romans, Judea, Khazarians, the Templar, the Masons, the Illuminati, the Vatican, I see these as costumes that they have adorned so that you wouldn't really know what and who they really were. Like the Vatican costumes itself as this pinnacle of monotheism and the interpreter of the Word of God. That's their costume. But the truth of the matter is that's actually the KM. They're Satanists. They're blood ritual followers. They are oriented to demonology and the whole demonic world. And that is all hidden from people under the costume of the Vatican. And so that's the way this Khazarian Mafia has always operated, was it's been behind these major institutions that have steered and furnished the world. Everything that we know right now in this society that's been handed to you through the public education system is actually the history that the Khazarian Mafia has handed everyone. It's all lies. That's why our medicine is lies. That's why our religions are lies. That's why our governments are lies. It's because they all source from these anti-human groups that predate us for thousands of years. And this map will help you begin to understand where and how this all came about. Here's a little closer view. Oh, sorry. Here, right here is a closer view. And you can begin to see. Now this, I've put this together so that folks can begin to make a basic sense of what's happening. And if you look at the two or the three lines, they're on the left, the Pharaoh, Roman, Templar, Masons. That's all your sun worshipers. These are the people that worship Baal, the ancient son of the ancient Canaanites. And then in the center here is the spiritual aspect, the money there on the left with the sun, and in the center here is the spiritual aspect and the money aspect. There you can see the Switzerland and the Illuminati. This is where all the wealth is coming out of the Masons and the Templars and the Romans. This is all congealing there in the center. And then on the right are your black sun worshipers. And these are the people who are into the whole blood sacrifice thing and are into the whole Satanism thing. You can see there on the right, human sacrifice, and on the left, Baal worship. That's sun worship. Sun worship is the background, is the history of monotheism. It comes out of the pharaohs. It comes out of the Romans. And so monotheism is what these here on the left have been trying to con everybody into. And then you have your black sun worshipers on the right. Those are the people that worship Saturn. These are your Satan worshipers on the right. So this map, its design is to simply bring a semblance to the history, a costuming that you can recognize and see in the history books, and how these people have hidden, the KM have hidden themselves from you. So you have no idea why our world has become 1984. And it all goes back to these clowns in our history that have shaped our world. And there's the dates when things were going on. And you guys, in your own research, please chase this stuff. Black nobility, 1291, the organizing of the Merovingians, and money. This is all coming out of the Knights Templar, the Vatican, the Masons, the Jesuits, who are the stormtroopers of the Vatican. This is all coming out of this corruption. And that is why our world is based in maritime law and injustice and the destroying of human beings. That is the background. And then finally, they all coalesce there with the Illuminati in 1776. Interesting, the same year that America was founded. There in 1776 with the Illuminati organizing so to bring about the front that would cause the Novus Ordo Secularum, the New World Order. So this map is simply in place for everybody to start to make sense of the timeline and what we're doing here. Opening statement. We have been marginalized with abuse bonds, pacified with false religions, coerced with harmful medicine, mugged with pernicious usury, and distracted with materialistic red herrings while our children and sovereignty were taken with mind control, used as blood currency, and forced to participate and pay for the whole world operation with fake wars. Many wonder how this happened. Many wonder how governments, all governments, became totally corrupted. How did we get to the place we are today? What happened? How did the planet become a human farm? I do see the planet as a human farm. How did society become 1984? Why is society sick? This lecture is to attempt to offer some answers to those questions. The science, our point of departure now is the Phoenicians. The science, governmental, medical, judicial, political, religious, and financial worlds are all direct and unmistakable testimonies of the work of the Phoenicians. All of the institutions that run the major societies of the world are bought through blackmail or coercion or just downright corruption. Bankers and wealthy now rule the world. The bank is now the center of the city. It used to be the sanctuary, and before that it was the temple. Now it is the bank. That is the center facility that runs the society. Bankers and wealthy now rule the world. Banking corruption dates back to the Phoenicians, the original maritime bankers who controlled the Mediterranean sea trade from, and this might be wrong, Jay, please correct me, from about 2500 BC until they assimilated into commerce and surrounding kingdoms in 300 BC, while always carrying their own identity as Semites. Unique identity. They didn't assimilate. They maintain their unique identity. And here's a pro tip: the corrupt maritime laws used today to illegally control and tax the populace dates back to these people, the Phoenicians. The financial con you find yourself in originated with the Phoenicians, and they call it Babylonian money magic. It's financial spell casting, illegal taxing called usury, and it ultimately sources from the Levant and the Mediterranean coasts. And here again is the map, and we're going to see right there, here's the Phoenicians, right there under Baal worship, sun worshippers. And this is, folks, this goes all the way back to the beginning of our current human civilization. Obviously, when Jay's talking about the cataclysm, this would go back to that cataclysm before the world was reinstituted by that event. And I would love to read up on that, Jay, ASAP. And again, this is just showing you the map and showing you the Phoenicians and how they whittled down into this system. So who were the Phoenicians? The Phoenicians were a Semitic people. They were an ancient civilization originating from the Mediterranean coastlines out of Egypt and also the region of modern-day Lebanon, coastal Syria, and northern Israel. Tyre and Sidon became prominent Phoenician cities around the early 3rd millennium BC, circa 2700 to 2500 BC. According to my research, Jay, I could be wrong, during the emergence of the Phoenician civilization along the eastern and southern Mediterranean coasts. Archaeological evidence such as pottery and settlement patterns suggests that these cities were inhabited by Canaanite populations, the precursors to the Phoenicians, as early as the 4th millennium BC. By the 2nd millennium BC, particularly around 1500 BC, Tyre and Sidon had developed into major urban centers with distinct Phoenician cultural and economic characteristics, including maritime trade and the use of the Phoenician alphabet. This group undergirds an incredible amount of our current history. Now, there's Tyre and Sidon, so everyone can see. These are ancient Canaanite cities. The Phoenicians are ancient Canaanite Semites coming out of the Egypt and the Levant, and these two cities were critical to their control of maritime trade of the Mediterranean Sea between the eastern and western portions of the hemisphere. And the mediator between these dealings of the Silk Road and the West went through Tyre and Sidon, or a majority of them did. And this is, in my opinion, who the Amalechites and the Khazarians were interacting with to bring in all of the mercantile items that they were raping and stealing from the travelers on the Silk Road. They were taking that stuff down into the Mediterranean Sea for sale to the West. And who's buying them? The royalty. And this ties in the royalty to the Phoenicians, to ancient Babylonia, the Amalechites. This ties them all together through the seafaring trade that the Phoenicians are overseeing during this time. And this is why they have infiltrated everything. The Phoenicians built themselves on a legacy of trade and urban development. From 1500 BC onward, they shaped the Western world through their maritime trade, colonization efforts, and spread of their alphabet, which became a cornerstone of Western writing systems. Their impact on Babylon and subsequent empires was primarily through trade and cultural exchange, serving as a bridge that disseminated Mesopotamian innovations across the ancient world. Phoenicians assimilated, they didn't die off. These contributions are substantiated by archaeological discoveries such as shipwrecks and inscriptions and historical accounts from figures like Herodotus affirming the Phoenicians' enduring legacy. Now, here they are. This is a map of the Eastern Hemisphere in 1300 BC. And look, there you see, right there in the center of the action, right next to the Levant, there to the right, we have the Phoenician city-states, Tyre, Sidon, establishing themselves there on the coast. Why? Because there's money and trade there. There is money to be made and a society to build, and that is a very logical place to position yourself, right there in the center of the action. Linguistically and culturally, Phoenicians are classified as a Semitic group, closely related to other Semitic peoples like the Canaanites, Hebrews, and Aramaeans. Their language, Phoenician, was a Semitic language akin to Hebrew and Aramaic, and their alphabet, which influenced the Greek and Latin scripts, reflects this linguistic heritage. The Phoenicians remained Semitic throughout their history, defined by their language, culture, and ethnicity. They were known for maritime trade, key, maritime trade. That's why we still are in the maritime trade system, is because it comes out of ancient Phoenicia, the Canaanites. We are still, to this day, operating under Canaanite law. Think about that, folks. Canaanite law. And establishing colonies across the Mediterranean, flourishing from around 1500 to 300 BC. The Phoenicians thrived on the Mediterranean coasts, establishing extensive trade networks that enriched them. Hellenistic influence after 300 BC and later Roman rule gradually integrated Phoenician city-states into broader empires, but Phoenician cities like Tyre and Sidon remain vital to Mediterranean trade systems they had developed. Here we are, about 600 years later. Look, the Phoenicians, look at them colonizing all on the coast. They have taken over maritime trade, established the laws, the connections. They are at the center of it, and they are remaining their own nation. They are not just becoming Assyrians and Romans. They are remaining their own Semitic identity. They are holding fast because they're so wealthy and have such huge influence. They have their own empire. And so we can see now, 600 years later, they have fully colonized, and man, they are set up to control what happens in the West. Historical records like the Amarna letters in the 14th century BC mention both Tyre and Sidon as significant players in regional trade and politics under Egyptian influence. Phoenician identity solidified during this period, driven by their roles as key ports for commerce with Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later Greece. By the first millennium BC, that's 1000 BC, Tyre and Sidon were fully established as leading Phoenician city-states known for their shipbuilding, purple dye production, and extensive trade across the Mediterranean. And here we are, 1000 BC. There they are, Phoenicians right there. Down you see Israel, Egypt, the Edomites. Here they come. Here they come, folks. It's all happening in front of you. Here's the Phoenician expansion from 11th to 6th centuries BCE. Look, guys. Look. See all the purple? They are controlling. They are controlling the Mediterranean. Look at their influence all the way into the Assyrian Empire there on the right. There's Tyre, Sidon, and Baalbek. Look at that city right there next to Tyre and Sidon, just north. Baalbek, B-A-A-L, Beck. What does that tell you? These are Baal worshippers. And then we see there in East Hemisphere, 100 BC, nearly 1,000 years later. Look, the Republic of Rome has taken over of the Mediterranean, interacting right there with the Phoenicians. This is, folks, this is where all of this stuff comes from, comes out of. Now
hey, I would like to interject on that right there.
Please.
This how Rome pulled this off is because Tyre and Sidon, being surrounded by all these super heavyweights, like you said, that all these major empires in that area, being very close to Parthia, which was becoming a threat. They began to colonize. In the 7th century BC, Tyre and Sidon began to export two major huge colonies. One of them was Ionia, the Ionic states, Miletus, where all the shipping guilds were basically located, that were going to the Greek islands and going all the way out to Ogygia, which was one of the ancient names of Ireland. But also, are you familiar with Carthage? Carthage was founded by the Phoenicians.
Yes.
And it was on the North African coast, and it was like an escape city. When shit got too bad in Tyre and Sidon, they had a whole city they could go to. The problem was Carthage was only 2 days sail from Rome, and Rome couldn't have that. And this is where you get the First and Second Punic War. This is why Rome went and took over Carthage. But Carthage was, even though it's called Carthaginian, it was 100% Phoenician.
That's fantastic information. Thank you for that. Yes, and I knew. Didn't they salt Carthage? Who was it that salted Carthage?
Yeah, they did. They stole the library. There was Carthage had gotten like 200 volumes from the ancient Pergamum library, and Pergamum is where the New Testament says that Satan's seat was. And they got this old library. They took all that. They salted the fields. They enslaved the population, and they pretty much did away with Carthage.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good. Now what I want to do, Jay, is now we're at the middle portion. I've gotten a good grasp of the Phoenicians here. I want to run that video, Maxwell, where Jordan Maxwell talks about the Phoenicians.
All right.
Let's run that video. It has the words on it. Just run the video, and then I'll start after it ends.
Okay.
It's 5 minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I disappeared for a minute. I have no idea. StreamYard kicked me out of my own studio.
Oh my goodness, that wasn't your choice? That was done to you?
Yeah, I couldn't even get back in. I tried, so I couldn't even get back in through the link I have on my desktop. So at the last minute, I just went ahead and just I turned my Wi-Fi off, turned it back on, and I went in through the browser.
Holy smokes. Has that ever happened before?
No, man, I think you brought all this bad juju on me, bro.
I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
That's all right.
Actually is a copyrighted book. It's interesting to find out who owns the copyright on the Bible. Who owns the copyright? Who wrote this Bible? And where did it come from? And who put up the money to make it the most important book ever published on the earth, that everybody has a copy of it in their language? Why is it so important? It has to do with the promotion of an ancient secret society and their particular agenda that they have for the world. They were the people behind Adolf Hitler who were promoting the new world order. And then comes in America, the Bushes with their new world order. And the Vatican talking about the coming of a new earth, a new world. And the whole New World Order is an old ancient philosophy going back into the ancient world, and it has nothing to do with any people called Israel. The whole area we call today Israel is actually Canaan, and you will find that the Canaanites had a particular language called Phoenician. And the word Phoenician, going back to the ancient Phoenician peoples of the Middle East, give us today the Phoenician language is referred to as Hebrew. In fact, there is no Hebrew language. There is a Hebrew people that speak a language that we call them Hebrews, and therefore we say that they're speaking Hebrew. It's not Hebrew. It's a Phoenician Canaanite language. And we get the word Phoenician gives us our word phony. It comes from Phoenician. Phony and the phonics. And words like that comes from Phoenician. So go back and look at the Phoenician people, and you will see that what we call Phoenicia is today referred to as Israel. Israel is the ancient land of Canaan in the Bible. You talk about all the horrible things that were going on in the land of Canaan. And that God cursed the land of Canaan and said it was a terrible place and to have nothing to do with it. That's in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Well, Canaan today is called Israel. Israel is the land of Canaan today. And this is why this is when you get into the words and terms of where these words come from, and the incredible story about the Canaanite religion. The priest of Canaan they would offer up sacrifices. Usually it was children. They would burn as a sacrifice. They would kill the children and burn their bodies on an altar. And then, according to the Canaanite religion, they said they were worshiping the sun. And the Canaanites called the sun Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal. Baal worship was the worship of the sun in the land of Canaan. Go back and look at it. Today, we say that we know that the priests of Canaan who were worshiping Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal as the sun, they were Baal worshippers, and they would offer up human sacrifice. They would kill children and people and then burn their bodies, but they were supposed to eat part of the burned bodies. They were burning the bodies so that God could smell the flesh. He liked smelling burnt flesh. And this is what we're told in the Canaanite religion, that God says, I love the smell of your sacrifices. The sacrifices were human, so when they're burning humans on the altar, God loved the smell of human bodies burning. And so that's where we get this idea that they were Baal worshippers, were eating the bodies of their sacrifices. And so they were from Canaan, and so they were Baal worshippers from Canaan, which gives us our word Canabal, or cannibal. Cannibal comes from Canaan worshippers of worshiping Baal, Canabal, cannibals. And this is what we call today Israel. Israel is the land of Canaan-Baal worship, the sun god. The sun being B-A-A-L, Baal, or swastika, or tetragramma, Aton. All of this goes back to the sun worship, moon worship, Venus worship, the worship of the planet Saturn, the worship of the moon. All of these are ancient pagan religions, and nobody today gives a damn. Nobody seems to care. We just go along to get along, and whatever everybody else is doing, that's what we'll do. Everybody's going to the synagogue. Good. We'll all go to the synagogue too. Nobody seems to know when they get there where the word synagogue comes from. Everybody's going to church. Yeah, we all Christians going to church. You don't know where the word church comes from. You need to go back and get a dictionary and look at the words and what you are supposedly involving yourself in, because you're involving yourself in a dark, ancient secret. And this is why the world is not getting any better, because we are based on lies, deception. There is no such a thing as an ancient Israel. There is no Lord coming back to save us. These are all ancient stories.
Okay, that's it. So hopefully that's helpful. And then open up the second set of slides, the ones that I haven't done yet, that other file that had the second set of slides. It starts with a map. There. Boom. Okay, now, folks, we're going to go back in time again now that we have established the Phoenicians and you got a basic idea what they were doing. We're going back in time to the beginnings of the Khazaria, the seeds of the Khazaria, the Khazars. Right there between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea are the Caucasus Mountains. And this is where these horse-faring societies began to congeal to form the Khazarian Mafia. And the Khazars were a confederation of Slavic, Scythian, Sarmatian, Hunnic, Bulgar, Iranian, and Turkish tribes. And this is all coming out from what happened there in the Levant, when everything was breaking apart, when these tribes were breaking apart, and the Canaanites were basically assimilating into all of these other groups of people that would rule the world. And so part of that grouping, reseeding of these controllers happened in Khazaria. And it is my argument that the Amalekites went up there probably, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jay, unless I'm completely off the map, but I'm thinking that right around 1700, 1600 BC is when the Amalekites began to make their way up to the Caucasus Mountains. Some of them, not all of them, the hard satanic ones, so that they could practice their ritualistic satanic murder behavior outside and away from the organizing society, and they would be up in the misty mountains on their own, where they could be isolated and can carry out their practice. And so it's my argument that that was a magnet. It was the area, that area was bringing about these satanic people that eventually, when the trade routes opened up, that they would take over. And so here we are, 100 AD, after the trade routes have opened. The trade routes open between 200 and 0 AD or BC. That is when they had their lifeblood coming in from the east that they would begin to pilfer. If we go to the next slide here, we'll get right into it and we'll start moving forward. Some rabbinical interpretations, the name Amalek, founder of the Amalekites, is etymologized as Amlak, meaning a people who lick blood. A Luciferian, and this is a quote from Jay Parker, a Luciferian who abused me said she proudly traced her bloodline all the way back to the Amalekites. The satanic lineage and Lucifer worshiping tradition in the Khazarian Mafia comes out of ancient pagan nature worshiping cults like the Canaanites. These cults related their celestial gods through blood sacrifice. Baal and Molech worshiping cannibalistic adrenochrome drug tribal blood systems in Canaan became the foundation of the current Khazarian Mafia Luciferians' spirituality. This society related to nature through the icons and rites of Lucifer, a being of light, knowledge, power, and pure evil. They established relationship with Lucifer, who would offer longevity, pleasure, material power, and knowledge in exchange for human blood and souls, preferably children, and always torturing before killing. The Canaanites passed, that's to harvest loose. The Canaanites passed their knowledge within the tribe through oral tradition and initiation rites that carried the satanic Luciferian philosophy, which eventually organized in Edom and the Caucasus Mountains from the lineage of Amalek, the patriarch of the Amalekites, the bloodlickers, and Esau, the patriarch of the Edomites, and the son of Isaac, who was deceived by Jacob and Rebekah.
Let me interject about Amalek.
Please.
In the Old Testament, there is a very curious story where it is conveyed, and the book of Jasher goes into more detail, but Amalek was cursed because of an incident after the cataclysm of the 10 plagues over Egypt, and people were escaping in all different directions. Some were taking by ship, they were leaving in fleets from Egypt. And then one group, which according to the Old Testament became the Israelites, this group was passing out of Egypt overland. And the story, the Exodus, they passed the Red Sea, all this stuff, whether it's true or not. In the narrative of the Old Testament, in the train of the escaping Israelites, many of them were captured and enslaved, and some of them were killed. And it was because the Amalekites had come out of the wilderness, and it was an attack of opportunity because the van wasn't protected. It was all the older people and the younger people, and they were just in the very rear. As Moses was leading the Israelites out. So Amalek came, and Moses cursed Amalek when he prayed to God, to Yahweh and all that, and God cursed Amalek.
Gotcha.
So in the narrative, it's very interesting that the Amalekites were given 414 years. That's the cursed earth period according to calendrical systems that have been documented by other people like Dr. Stephen Jones. So this 414-year period goes by until the curse is fulfilled. And in the Old Testament, the curse is fulfilled when King Saul, who himself was cursed for consulting the witch of Endor. And King Saul consults the witch of Endor, and his problem is a giant king who is ruling over the Amalekites, and his name is Agag. And the story in the Old Testament is fascinating because it literally says that King Saul stood 1 or 2 heads taller than any other man in Israel. And then it goes and gives a genealogy for King Saul. And when you go back 5 names on the genealogy, it goes to someone named Aphiah, which is the Hebrew word for a giant. So it's describing why King Saul was so tall. But what's amazing is when King Saul was ordered by the prophet Samuel to kill Agag because the cup of God's wrath was now full. meaning the curse, 414 years, the curse is now at fruition. It's time to kill Agag. Agag is the king of the Amalekites.
Gotcha.
So King Saul pulled the sword out but couldn't do it. He couldn't chop the dude's head off. He marveled over how huge Agag was, because King Saul's already one or two heads taller than everybody else, but he's looking up at this guy who the Israelites captured, and he couldn't do it. He said he was extraordinary. He's magnificent. I can't kill this guy, even though God wanted him dead. He was the king of the Amalekites. So the prophet took the sword and cut the giant's head off. This is in the Old Testament. This is the Amalekites, and it's the exact same time period that you just described that other Amalekites were going into the Caucasus, which is interesting because the Amalekites also invaded northern Egypt. So, the Arabians in that part of the world have a long history of doing the same thing. When the population explodes, they go in all different directions, just populating everywhere. The same thing the Amalekites did, because in Egypt, they were called the Hyksos, the foreign rulers, the shepherd kings. Exact same time in history you're describing as Amalekites going further north into the Caucasus.
Right on, dude. Outstanding. Thank you for that. That is outstanding. I love having you in the room, man. This is fantastic. Thank you. Okay. It was through Amalek and the bloodlines of Esau, the Edomites, the Canaanites, the sodomizers from Ham's bloodline, and Baal-worshipping tribes out of the Levant that formed the old religion, the blood-drenched Satanism that would eventually unite its satanic spiritual power with Phoenician money magic to rule the world as the chosen ones, with Lucifer as their god. These lineages eventually would go on to form the Illuminati thousands of years later in 1776 under Weishaupt. Now here, Jay, please look at this and tell me where I'm wrong. This is a timeline that I made so that folks, when you look at this, this helps you make sense, because these dates, these people, these times, it can get very confusing. And so it's helpful when you've got a timeline here that shows the ages that we're talking about and the people in time as, as a certain history, certain forms of history. This is the way they form the timeline. And so you can see there Abraham in 2000 lived 175 years. His son Isaac, this is Esau Jacob, the Esau Jacob deception, which is where that came from, and Edom founded. This is all going down in this 2000 BC all the way down through 1300 BC, when all of these major events you're reading in the Bible, the Israelites fighting, I believe that's 1300, 1250 BC, right around there. They're all duking it out in the Levant, these power structures, and the winner continues to be the satanic lines, the satanic people, because they are in communion with a materialist God that has tremendous amounts of power that they are accessing. And so it gives them advantage over other cultures, not even including all of the technology, namely the Hittites forging iron, and this changing the whole scope and scape of how this stuff all unfolded. So I've just put that slide in this so that folks can begin to see the timeline and how this stuff falls out. It's not just crazy talk. There's actually a chronology to all of this that makes very good sense. As Jay just opened up with some of the stuff I was talking about, there's real logic behind this. This isn't just crazy conspiracy stuff. This is real logical history that we're following to understand the world. Now, here's some of the lineages. Canaan, the grandson of Noah, settled in the Levant and founded the Canaanites. Canaan's grandson was Nimrod, the king of Babel. He built the Tower of Babel and the city of Nineveh. According to the Bible, Canaan, the grandson of Noah through Ham, Genesis 9:18-25, was cursed by Noah for Ham's sin, sodomizing his father, and destined to serve his brother's descendants as his curse. Canaan's descendants, the Canaanites, settled in the Levant, modern-day Israel, Lebanon, and parts of Jordan and Syria, establishing city-states like Sidon and Tyre, which would become the key maritime trade centers ruled by the Phoenicians, the ancient Canaanites, and this started 2700 BC and was fully established by 1500 BC. And here is the Levant. Sometimes when I say the Levant, people don't know what it is. Here it is.
Hey, before you go into your next slide, I have to interject.
Please.
This is very compelling. You're talking about the curse of Ham. All right. The curse of Ham, whose older name was actually Kim. from which we get southern Egypt, Chemisia, the original kingdom of Kemet, comes from his name.
Okay.
Now, what you just said it's an easy mistake to make.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you how you'll find the correct answer.
Okay.
There is a phrase in the Old Testament. It's also in the book of Jasher. It's in Levitical law as well. The Levitical law actually tells you what it means to see your father's nakedness. It does not mean that Noah was sexually violated.
Okay.
Let me explain. In the passage where it says Ham came in and he saw his father's nakedness and all that, this is an old colloquial that was very popular in that period of time. The book of Leviticus, under Levitical law, specifically says that it is punishable by death to see your father's nakedness.
Got it.
And then it defines that. To see your father's nakedness means you slept with his wife.
Is that right? I've never heard of that.
Listen, this is where the whole Nimrod Semiramis deal came, where the son sleeping with his mother and all that. This was all real history. Ham slept with his mother, Naamah. Naamah was a voluptuous, beautiful woman from the pre-flood world. Their child was Semiramis, who was later regarded as a goddess because she became the queen of Babylon. Okay. Semiramis was of pre-flood genetics, so she was of Titan and giant blood. She wasn't ordinarily human. Before the flood, humans were a lot much bigger. So for a pre-flood son to get his own Titaness mother pregnant, it produced Semiramis, and this is why Semiramis was regarded as a goddess across Sumer, Akkad, Babylonia, and all that. Her son was named Namarsin of Akkad, who later became known as Hammurabi, the fifth king of the Amorite dynasty of Babylon. This is why you see depictions of him as huge. He's big. But the whole Genesis story is based on real colloquials from the second millennium BC. And when Genesis says that Ham saw his father's nakedness, Christians have often interpreted that wrong, thinking that Noah was sexually violated and what happened was homosexual. It's not, because in the book of Numbers and Leviticus, one of those books, Numbers and Leviticus, under Levitical law, it literally says he is to be put to death who sees his father's nakedness, because he's not supposed to violate his father's wife.
Great insight, dude. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. That's fantastic knowledge. Thank you for that. Outstanding. Okay, here we have the Levant. A lot of people don't know where that is, and that's where it is. That's the Levant. Egypt there on the left, the Arabian Peninsula, Mesopotamia, Anatolia. This is all surrounding. And the reason why it's so important is because you have so many powerful nations that all mix right here. This is where they're all joining with the Mediterranean and all the commerce and mercantilism that's going on at that time, and the busyness and the development of the populations. I mean, this is the center of action, and that's why you're seeing so many battles, or we see so many battles going on in this area. And to this day, it's still in upheaval, and it's because it's such a critical portion there, right there in the West, and the development of the West and the Near East. Okay, and then obviously this is the cities that I was showing you earlier. This is the Phoenicians. And there you can see better the Baalbek city I mentioned earlier, and Sidon and Tyre, and the Mediterranean. Okay, out from Esau would come the Edomites, and from Eliphaz, Esau's son, Amalek, the Edomites originated around 1300 BC and formed a kingdom by the 9th century BC and began declining with Assyrian and Babylonian conquests during the 8th to 6th centuries BC. These families assimilated all around the Levant, and some migrated away from war and the city-state and into the Caucasus Mountains between 1700 and 1000 BC. This allowed them to practice and develop their black magic arts far from organized society, while building their numbers and intensifying their Satanism. That comes out of that document from Preston James that I mentioned at the beginning of this here. In this time period, they ritualistically continued a blood relationship to Lucifer and became the germ seed that birthed Khazaria when the Silk Road trade routes opened starting in 200 BC and continuing through 0 BC. It was these disgruntled, angry, barbaric descendants of Ham, Esau, and Amalek that forged the satanic lineage that would become the Khazarian Mafia. Here are the genealogies. And then here we see out of Shem, we have Esau down there with the Edomites. And then here's Amalek coming out of the concubine Timnah and Eliphaz, the son of Esau. And the 12 tribes of Israel are shown there. This is the hatred. Just divide that one on the right down in half. And the chiefs of Edom and the tribes of Israel were in war all through the Old Testament that you read about. So this is the lineage, the genealogy of these people that we're mentioning constantly in this dialogue. The Amalekite nation is from the bloodline of Esau. Esau's son Eliphaz and his concubine Timnah, a Canaanite from Eden, were the parents of Amalek. Amalek founded the Amalekites, drinkers of blood. Timnah was a Horite from Eden, a Canaanite sex mistress of Eliphaz. This made Amalek an illegitimate, outcast bastard child by Hebrew tradition, and this consternating identity set the tone for his life. And that ties into what you said, Jay, that he was cursed. This guy was cursed. And then here we have Ham, and this is the heritage of the Canaanites. And here you see the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Hivites. Anybody who's reading the Bible knows these names. And this just shows the genealogy, that there is actual logic behind these psychopathic people and how they congealed to form a group to control the world. And then here is evidence of DNA, shows that migrants from there in the bottom, shows that migrants from the distant Caucasus Mountains combined with the indigenous population to forge the unique Canaanite culture that dominated the area between, this is the Caucasus Mountains, between Egypt and Mesopotamia during the Bronze Ages. It's covering up the slide things, covering up the words, but from approximately 3500 BC to 1200 BC. And this links the Canaanites with the Caucasus Mountains, which became the home of the Khazarians. So we're linking here through DNA, the Canaanites to the, and that's where you can find it right there at that link, the Canaanites to this Khazarian group that's forming up there between the Caspian and Black Seas. The Amalekites were described in the Old Testament as Israel's relentless enemies who harassed the Israelites during the Exodus. As descendants of Esau's grandson Amalek, they were commanded to be annihilated by God, with Israel's king Saul initially failing to completely carry out the order. I bet that's what you were referring to earlier,
That's
Jay.
what I was talking to. Yep.
Yep. Resulting in God's rejection of his kingship. Interestingly, the Book of Mormon also features a group called the Amalekites, describing them as particularly wicked individuals who became part of a violent religious order. Not to give any credits to Mormonism, but to just simply show it's not just in Christianity where you're seeing the development of the Amalekites.
Right.
They were renowned sorcerers and used witchcraft and blood sacrifice to drive their sick way of life. They were known to shapeshift and take forms of animals to escape capture. This notion may come out of their vast knowledge of the plant kingdom and how to use psychedelic plant substances to overcome an enemy. And as you mentioned earlier, Jay, the sneak attack, what I have found with these guys is that they weren't full on into the full frontal thing. They were into deception, sneak attack, and utilizing knowledge and mind like Sun Tzu to defeat an enemy rather than just your full frontal up front, fighting with swords against each other. Use the mind to coerce and deceive them. And to me, that really hearkened towards what would become the CIA, in that the CIA and the MIC use mind control to control the populations and to keep them pacified. And so, in my opinion, this mind control and this controlling major populations all comes out of this hallucinogenic work that the Amalekites were doing in the mountains, the Caucasus Mountains, honing their skill of Satanism. Okay, the Amalekites used plant hallucinogens, plant spell casting, mind control, sneak attack, and coercion to overcome their adversaries, much like we see today in the CIA and MIC activities. Invisible, clandestine, cunning moves to carry out an invisible agenda. Secrecy is how the satanic Amalekites operated, and they formed their secrets into the Khazarian Mafia and eventually the free agencies that monitor and control the world: CIA, MI6, Illuminati, Freemasons. Mind control, blood currency, and Satanism today harkens all the way back to the mind control work of the Amalekites perfected in the Caucasus Mountains from 1600 BC to sometime between 1000 and 1200 AD, when they were run out by Russia. And again, that concept comes out of James this. Preston James and Mike Harris is where this quote comes from. And this is straight from that article that I linked at the beginning of this talk, because at 100 to 800 AD, an incredibly evil society emerges in Khazaria. Khazarians develop into a nation ruled by an evil king who had ancient Babylonian black arts, occult oligarchs serving as his court. During this time, Khazarians became known to surrounding countries as thieves, murderers, road bandits, and for assuming the identity of those travelers they murdered as a normal occupational practice and way of life. And for folks that don't know about this, this is Khazaria. And what I want to show you are the trade routes here. Let me superimpose so you can see it a little bit better. Now, these are the trade routes that are coming out of the east that are moving in. And what I want you to notice is they're up in Khazaria, up here at the top where Khazaria is, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. You see the trade routes that are running right along the border. There you see in the lower portion where it says Harmazika. That is right at the base of the Caucasus Mountains. And you can notice then that they can take all this merchandise that they've been taking from the people that are traveling on this road and take it right down into the Roman Empire there at the Mediterranean Sea with the Phoenicians for trade.
They're in the middle. They're in the middle of the Silk Road between China and Rome.
Yeah. Yeah. They're in other words, they're in the perfect position to be able to attack these traders. So what they did, and if you guys don't know the story, what was happening is you would have mercantile, very fine silks and spices that are coming out of China. And these dear families have to make their way a 1-year journey across the world, basically, to and through Khazaria and all the way to the west, because the people who are buying that stuff are the royals, the Phoenicians, the people that are running the show. They're the ones who are buying these fine items from the Khazarians, who are stealing it from them as they travel the Silk Road. And so these Khazarians, what they would do is they would sneak attack these families that are on the road. They would overwhelm them and they would take them up into the mountains where they would torture them and adrenalize them and steal all that they're carrying and take on the identities of them. And the way they took on their identities was they would drug them with plant medicines and get them into an altered state. And over a period of 1 or 2 days, they would find out everything about their trade, where they came from, their family, how they did it, and then who were they going to be meeting in the West to sell these items. And then the Khazarians would take on those identities, wear their clothes, learn their children and lineage, and go and meet the people that they were going to meet in the West for the trade. And to me, this is the direct connection between what's going on in the Caucasus Mountains and Khazaria with the Phoenicians who are running the trade there in the Mediterranean. And this directly connects them in money and power and knowledge that the both of them were building all during this time between 100 AD and 1200 AD. And it completely makes sense because they are getting all of this money from the items that they're stealing from the Chinese people that are coming out from China on the Silk Road. And so this logically puts money, power, and connection between the Phoenicians and the Khazarians right around that time when they were interacting to make all this money and build their power. And then when Russia comes in somewhere between 900 and 1200 AD and runs out the Khazarians, they have already established all their relationships in the West over 1,000 years, marauding these traders that are coming through. And they basically, when Russia said, we're going to nail it, we're going to destroy you, they're just like, no problem. They just get up and leave and infiltrate all these Western cities that they have infiltrated over the years through this trade system that they have established via the Silk Roads. And so that is my theory here, that they were using these trade routes as
let me interject and add to that then.
Please.
So we can't ignore that one of the oldest, most well-established, prestigious, richest, and the great cultural asset to Italy is the city of Venice. You're familiar with Venice?
Yeah.
The name Venice, going back 3,000 years, is absolutely no different than the same name that the Phoenicians gave themselves. The people of Venice. It is phonetically identical.
Yes.
So Venice comes from Phoenicia. Venice was the city of purple. The Phoenicians were the people who sold the purple. The purple was a special dye that was derived from a Mediterranean mollusk. They used that dye to create like royal fabrics, bolts of fabrics. So this was one of the main things that Phoenicians were known for. You could get purple cloth from the Phoenicians, but I don't think you've seen this video, but I have a video I did with Martin Leakey and another one with Max Egan, where we show actual photographs of the entire Great Wall of China. And the Great Wall of China was measured out in Roman measurements, 16 Roman feet wide. Every tower is a Roman mile. And we showed that the Great Wall of China wasn't a wall. The crenellations are sometimes on one side and sometimes on the other side, and they were for areas that were known for banditry. These walls weren't designed to keep the Mongols out. That's false bullshit narrative that's been put out there. The Chinese didn't build the wall to keep the Mongols out. The wall was built at that elevation because there was a tremendous amount of traffic, merchandise. Mm-hmm. Max Egan took the theory of Martin Leakey and I to a whole nother level and showed underneath the Pacific Ocean on the coast of China at the end of the Great Wall were hundreds of wharfs, whole ancient stone quays where ships would dock. It was the Amazon of the ancient world. And what they were doing was moving, and we have a lot to support this. All the Roman coins and Roman artifacts that have been found in ancient China, the very fact that the Chinese themselves said that the Great Wall was built around 100 BC, which is the exact same time the Romans were in the area. Well, this wall also went into the Caucasus. And this is what most people don't realize. No one talks about the Great Wall of the Caucasus. It is identical to the Great Wall I've even shown it on maps on my channel, the Great Wall of the Caucasus. It is what you're talking about. It is the ancient trade route that was occupied by these people and run all the way through. The Chinese were used on the wall, but it's not even really a wall. It's a road. Yeah. And the road has all these fortifications every Roman mile, and it would have been very easy for local Chinese with backpacks and rickshaws to go from tower to tower, and then they only go so far. They drop all their merchandise and all their products, and other Chinamen pick them up, and then they go on down the road, and these go back home, and merchandise would have been going back and forth. And under this method, it would have taken less than 2 weeks for anybody in Rome to put an order in, and merchandise steadily coming in would have filled Roman warehouses. It literally was the Amazon of the ancient world. And what you're doing is adding more information to what we've already had. Yeah. You're actually showing us where the main centers of distribution and operation were happening at this time.
That is fantastic. I had never heard of the Caucasus Wall. That is crazy, man. I want to definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a massive wall. It's identical to the Great Wall of China.
That's fantastic. I'm going to look forward to that. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Okay, let's see. What I'm also going to be doing here, this is showing you basically in 200 AD the spread, and there's the Roman Empire taking over. We see all that. And then here's 700 AD, and you could see the Khazars right there. You could see right there on the right, like we've been showing you. And this is where they actually are in real history that your professor may tell you. He may actually know about that Khazarian area right there, obviously, because that's the accepted history. So this is aligning to the theory very nicely. And then as we see, an ultimatum is delivered to Russia. I'm going to go back here one sec. The ultimatum is delivered via Russia. Jay, do you know if that was in like 900 or was it more like 1200 when Russia threatened them that, hey, we're going to come in and destroy you if you don't change and stop doing what you're doing?
It was in the 700s AD when they gave them an ultimatum to pick a religion because the Ottoman Turks were moving in, the Islam was moving in. Judaism was kind of neutral because they controlled the trade routes, and then the Europeans were all Christian, and you already know that Russia was Christian. So the Russians came in and gave them an ultimatum, and that's why there's been so much animosity between those of Khazarian stock and Russian stock. This is why the Bolsheviks went in and totally, butchered 22 million to 60 million white Russian Christians. It was payback for centuries and centuries of contention between Russia and Khazaria.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, well, I won't get into that. That's too political. Okay, let's go here. The leaders of this in 800 AD, and you're claiming 700 AD. Fine. The leaders of the
but I'm not 700s. It wouldn't have been 700. I'm thinking 750s, 760s.
Gotcha. Right on. The leaders of the surrounding nations of Khazaria, especially Russia, have had so many years of complaints by their citizens that, as a group, they deliver an ultimatum to the Khazarian king. They send a communique that he must choose one of 3 Abrahamic religions for his people and make it his official state religion, and require all Khazarian citizens to practice it, and socialize all Khazarian children to practice that faith. The Khazarian king was given a choice between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The Khazarian king chose Judaism and promised to stay within the requirements laid out by the surrounding confederacy of nations led by the Russian Tsar. And obviously we know he didn't do that. Despite his agreement and promise, the Khazarian king and an inner circle of oligarchs kept practicing ancient Babylonian black magic under the guise of being Ashkenazi Jews, also known as secret Satanism. This Satanism involved occult ceremonies featuring child sacrifice after bleeding them out, drinking their blood, and eating their flesh. This is the face ripoffs, where they tear the face off the child, drink their blood, adrenalize them, all that stuff. This is what they're practicing daily there. The deep, dark secret of the occult ceremonies was that they were all based on ancient Baal worship from the Canaanites. And that is actually, if y'all have been watching this the whole time, that makes complete sense. In order to fool the Confederacy of Nations led by Russia that they were watching Khazaria, the Khazarian king melded these Luciferian black magic practices with Judaism and created a secret satanic hybrid religion known as Babylonian Talmudism. This was made the national religion of Khazaria and nurtured the same evil that Khazaria was known for before. And here we go. What is the Babylonian Talmud? The Babylonian Talmud, compiled between the 3rd and 6th centuries AD in the Jewish academies of Babylonia, modern-day Iraq, is a central text of rabbinic Judaism, serving as a comprehensive record of Jewish law, ethics, philosophy, and folklore. Emerging from the oral traditions of the Mishnah, 200 AD, it consists of the Gemara, extensive rabbinic discussions and commentaries on the Mishnah. The Talmud addresses a wide range of topics from ritual practices to civil law and reflects the intellectual and spiritual life of Babylonian Jewry under Persian and early Islamic rule. It became authoritative for Jewish communities worldwide, particularly Ashkenazi Jews, shaping religious practice, legal reasoning, and cultural identity, and is distinguished from the shorter Jerusalem Talmud compiled in Palestine. Ultimately, it is a highly racist Zionism. Their philosophy is superior race theory, misogyny, exclusive God, Lucifer, blood sacrifice, religious tribalism, and absolute beliefs. Their God is Lucifer, a being of evil, power, authority, and sacrifice. What is the DNA lineage of Ashkenazi Jews? Modern genetic.
Hold on.
Yep.
I just got to interrupt you because you're very good at your presentation, but I'm you know what? At the risk of pissing people off, I'm just going to say it. I've read many commentaries on the Talmud. I have gone through the material. I have extensive notes on it. I've never put them on YouTube. I still don't quite know what I'm going to do with them, but I'm going to tell you one thing that you left out.
Yeah.
Of this deal, and maybe you did it because maybe a little out of self-preservation, but I really don't have that, so I'm just going to put it out there. That text also promotes pedophilia.
Okay. Not surprisingly. Yeah, not surprising at all. Okay. Thank you for that, Jason. Appreciate that additive. Thank you. What is the DNA lineage of Ashkenazi Jews? Modern genetic research supports a mixed origin from Ashkenazi Jews. Studies of mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome markers indicate that Ashkenazi Jews descend from a small founding population in the a small founding population of Middle Eastern Jewish men who migrated to Europe and intermarried with local European women, particularly in the early medieval period of the 8th to 10th centuries. About 50 to 80% of Ashkenazi maternal lineages trace to European ancestry. A genetic bottleneck around 800 to 1000 CE suggests a small founding group that expanded rapidly in later centuries. How does that jive with what you know, man? Does that jive at all or no? In regards to the Ashkenazi lineage, I'm curious.
Let me read this out loud. So modern genetic research supports a mixed origin for Ashkenazi Jews. Agreed. Studies of mitochondrial DNA, that's through the female, and Y chromosome markers indicate that Ashkenazi Jews descend from a small founding population of Middle Eastern Jewish men who migrated to Europe and intermarried with local European women. I'm gonna have to agree to that. My issue is a lot of modern researchers. I don't know if they're hired to do this and they're trying to muddle the waters, but I have actually butted heads with some guys about who are trying to promote that all the intrigues, everything that is negative in Jewish culture and all that is Ashkenazi. All the other Jews aren't guilty of all that. And I'm going to tell you now, I've read Cicero. I've read the Roman reports where they were having some real serious problems with these people. Look, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem not once, but twice. They didn't just attack it and destroy it. They salted the fields and sold the population off into the slave markets of the Mediterranean. You don't do the Roman didn't do that with hardly anybody else except the Phoenicians, who were a threat at Carthage. You know what I mean? But all the Roman wars, Rome had wars against everybody. They didn't sell the population off as slaves in the slave markets, but they did Jerusalem twice. In AD 70 and AD 134, Bar Kokhba rebellion. So what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with this. This seems to be far more historically accurate than a lot of things that are being put out in the field now, such as Ashkenazis are the bad Jews, all the other Jews are good. So I'm not, that's being promoted a lot in the field. I'm not saying all Jews are bad. They're not. I have friends that are Jewish. They even laugh at some of my videos and all that. They totally agree. But you know what? It's we're talking about the upper echelons of the elite who are basically running things. Many of them are Jewish. I mean, you don't have things like the ADL. You don't fund things like the Anti-Defamation League unless you're doing some wrong, because it's an intelligence organization that does nothing but smear campaigns against people who are exposing them. So it's anyway, yeah, I see this as I don't see any inaccuracy here.
Any blatant inaccuracies. Yeah, I just don't want to lead people astray, man. I want to make sure I'm as accurate as possible. Okay, sadly, the Khazarians continued their evil ways, robbing and murdering those from surrounding countries who traveled through or near Khazaria. Khazarian robbers often assumed merchant travelers' identities, like I mentioned earlier, after they murdered them, and became masters of disguise and false identities, a practice they have continued even to this very day, modeled, meaning the CIA, modeled from the Amalechites, the original shapeshifters. They use identity theft to take over identities of traveling trades families, like I mentioned, and establish trade relations with the Phoenician merchants and royalty in Rome and the surrounding Mediterranean seaports. I cannot read that under, and then it's under black from the under maritime laws. There it is. I can see it. Maritime laws. Okay, around 965 to 1200. Tell me if this is right, Jay. The Russians led a group of nations surrounding Khazaria and invaded in order to stop the Khazarian crimes against their people, which include kidnapping of their young children and infants for their blood sacrifice ceremonies to Baal. The Khazarian king and his inner court of criminals and murderers come to be known as the Khazarian Mafia by neighboring countries. The Khazarian leaders had a well-developed spy network all through Russian intelligence, and they obtained prior warning of the invasion and escaped from Khazaria to European nations in the west, taking their vast fortune with them in gold and silver, and established a system to usurp the bloodlines of the West, which they carried out all through the Dark Ages until they formally organized forces into the Illuminati. So what I'm trying to convey here is that there was a moment in time when they were driven out, and then they moved into the West and spent hundreds of years interbreeding with the Western royalty families, replacing the kings, taking over the nations. That's basically what I'm trying to show here, and to show that that began the taking over of the West somewhere between 12 and 1300 AD, when they began to formally take over the West, Spain, France, Germany, all these established countries. Is that about correct in your view?
Okay. I don't want to get too technical. So you're asking me about 965 through 1200. Okay, the Russians were called the Rus at the time. It was RUS. They were called the Rus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the main problems the Rus were having was Constantinople, was Byzantine. As a matter of fact, the Rus invaded Constantinople. They attacked Constantinople at least twice in the historical record. Now, I don't know. I don't know of any historical sources that talk about what these guys are saying about these accusations against the Khaganate here about Khazaria at that time, because I'm very familiar that after the Khazarians converted to Judaism, these were accusations leveled by many European countries against Khazaria. But you're asking me if those accusations pre-existed the conversion to Judaism. I don't know. I don't know that.
Interesting. Brilliant. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Okay. Just as the Phoenicians assimilated into the West, so also the Khazarians assimilated into Spain, Italy, France, Germany from the Middle Ages through the 18th century. And this is basically, here you see this map, 1300 AD, and look, the Khazarians are gone. See on the map, they're gone now. And you have the Golden Horde, as the Mongols have moved in. And so all the Khazarians have left that area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and they've gone into Hungary, Bohemia, Germany, France, Spain, because this is all along the coasts of the Mediterranean. They have an established network through the Phoenicians that they have been interacting with for hundreds of years with trade in this area. So it would be like if you're a businessman and you're handling a certain portion of the United States, so you establish all these relationships with the Eastern Board, let's say, and you got all these families and people that you know and companies that you're working with. Well, if you ever relocate your family to the East Coast, most likely you're going to have a relationship established there from the business that you've been in. And I've taken that same concept and just basically said, hey, look, the Amalechites, the Khazarians had to have been selling all of this merchandise to somebody. I mean, they're taking it from all of these traders that are crossing the Silk Road. It's got to go be sold somewhere. It's going somewhere. And so, in my opinion, it just makes perfect sense that when Russia ran them out, they just go smoothly right into all their relationships that they have filled the West with. It just makes sense to me.
So I want to address this scenario here, because I think there's something being left out here, and you may want to include this in future presentations.
Yes, sir.
It's in Gaul, the Franks spoke a German dialect that later became known as French. Most people don't know this, but the original French were Germans. Now, the Germans have their own language. So the Burgundians would have their own dialect of the German language. You would have the Corsicans in the Spanish, the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile, of Spain. The English have their own language. All these different languages through Europe, but there was one unifying chord that went through all of Europe, even into Russia at the time. And this is where Khazaria got its true power. This unifying deal was Yiddish, because it doesn't matter what country in Europe that the ghetto is established, that the Jewish neighborhood is established. There were always Jews in communities that spoke every other language in Europe. These people had networked so good. This is where your your tax assessors, your money lenders, your book binderies, they were all Jewish, and they had this international communication down pat. And the Jewish communication network was far superior to anybody else's because Europe was also all divided. It was all divided between different provinces and different kingdoms and different types of governments. But through it all, Jewish merchants, Jewish traders, Jewish bookbinders, because back then it was before the printing press, and bookbinding was a huge business, and they could set up shop, and kings and princes and dukes and earls and barons, they would pay them to stay just to repair the old libraries into newer libraries. Bookmaking was a huge deal back then, and the Jews had it sewed up. So what I'm saying is one of the greatest powers that helped infiltrate all the courts of Europe was the fact that Jews are an international community. They are a people without a country. So therefore, they had Jewish communities in every country, and they learned really quick. If you learn the language of the land, it's going to give us all kinds of advantages over, because I mean, everybody had to work through interpreters.
Yeah.
But the Jews had it down. This is something that they learned back in the Middle East, and they brought it into Europe and Asia. And when they did, this is one of the reasons why the Jews took over the international banking cartels. They did it. What they did was genius, but it was because they had an intelligence network already set up that was transcontinental. And they had their own language by which they could send messages, do all kinds. They had Yiddish. They had their own. It was like a variant of Hebrew, Babylonian, Slavic, Turkic. Yiddish is a mixture of all that. But it was their own language, and they used that and to their advantage. And this is why they have become as powerful as they are today. They infiltrated every single government.
Gotcha. That makes so much sense. That really helps me connect some dots. When you said the Jews really don't have a country, and so they're just spread out. I mean, that's genius, of course. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so they would have their influence in all of these different places simply because they didn't have the place of their own. It's amazing. It's amazing. Amazing detail. Thank you for that. And this just basically shows the Khazarian infiltration moving in. No big deal. You guys can understand that. And then here is another little timeline. This is after the one I showed you before. So this is one about 475 to 1913. And what I want to do now, and finishing up, this is the last portion of the talk. What I want to do now is name events chronologically in how these Ashkenazi Jews and the Khazarians moved into the system. And I'm going to use modern events that have happened in time to show their influence and how they really are in control of the United States. And it's going to make it really clear. Okay. Through blood communion with Lucifer, hellbent societies learned and honed mind-destroying techniques to disempower humanity. History, science, medicine, religion, and therefore the human race were all twisted to the will and destiny of Lucifer and his devotees. The Khazarian Mafia used their vast fortune to enter into a new system of Phoenician banking based on secret Phoenician black magic, money magic, that they claimed to have learned from the evil spirits of Baal in return for their many child sacrifices to him. That was an interesting connection to black money or black magic, money magic, directly to Satan or Lucifer, with royalty becoming more and more corrupted every decade. Now we'll start the timeline. By the 17th century, the KM hired Oliver Cromwell to murder King Charles I and make England safe for banking again. This began the English Civil Wars, which raged for nearly a decade, resulting in regicide of the royal family, that's inbreeding into them and removing their DNA purity of the royal family and hundreds of the genuine English nobility. This is how the city of London was set up as the banking capital of Europe and launched the beginning of the British Empire. This is why the Queen of England...
Absolutely. London by the controllers isn't even called London. Anytime when they're in communication with each other, they just call it the city. because it's a captured operation, and everybody knows when they're talking about, hey, I'll meet you at the city, or 300 of us are going to be convening next month at the city. They already know you're talking about London. London is a captured operation, doesn't even belong to the English people anymore.
Right. Yes, exactly. Outstanding. Okay, this is why the Queen of England, King Charles, and the entire royal English court is not blood authentic nobility, nor any of the Western royal bloodlines.
None of them are. None of the English royal family right now have anything to do with noble blood. You're right.
That's it. They are not authentic royal bloodlines. They are Khazarian infiltrated satanic bloodlines. In the 17th century, the KM murder the British royals and substitute their own fakes. In the 18th century, they murder the French royals. Right before World War I, they murder Austrian Archduke Ferdinand to start World War I. In 1917, they assembled their KM army, the Bolsheviks, and infiltrate and hijack Russia, murder the Tsar and his family in cold blood. They bayonet his favorite daughter through the chest. That was directly in front of him. He saw his own daughter bayoneted, and steal all the Russian gold, silver, and art treasuries. Right before World War II, they murder the Austrian and German royals. They then rid of the Chinese royals and disempower the Japanese ruler. In AD 1776, here's the timeline. Illuminati organized in Bavaria, Adam Weishaupt, German, and take over entire British aristocracy by 1800. In AD 1783, Revolutionary War won by America was Khazarian's first attempt at U.S. takeover. In 1800 to 1820, KM noticed China will only accept silver for spice payments and is thus bankrupting Europe of precious metals. So in 1820 to 1830, the KM noticed potential of Turkish opium addiction, and echoing ways of their ancestors, they addict China with Turkish opium illegally imported via the East India Company, which is black nobility. They only allow silver payments, which in turn bankrupt China of the precious metals they had earned from fair spice trade earlier. In 1839 to 42 and 56 to 60, 2 opium wars, and China lose both to England, which lead to internal rebellion and the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912. In 1914, they murder Austrian Archduke Ferdinand to start World War I, and in 1929, orchestrate the stock market scam to bankrupt Americans of their money, take it for themselves, and initiate the need for war. And what I wanted people... Did you want to say something, Jay? You good?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm reading the list.
Right on. And what I wanted to do is just so the tragedy of what this one right here, the Turkish opium, and they addict China. Look at what happened to China in the treaties. They actually legalized opium, the very substance that all these dear Chinese people have become addicted to through this psyop. They legalize it so they can bring in even more to further destroy the country. And China is forced to sign those documents. I mean, imagine how humiliating it is. And if you go through what they had to do in these concessions, it is absolutely tragic what they did. They are ruthless people. For people to get an idea just how ruthless this society is, they are here to destroy humanity. Okay.
Hey, there's a, I don't know if it's valid anymore, but I do remember reading about, even though it's already been returned back to China as far as control, there's an old treaty that specifically says that Hong Kong was going to remain under British control till the year 2045. But yes, that was the treaty till 2045. But then I know that they didn't relinquish Hong Kong back before that though?
They did.
Yeah, they made a big deal about it. But I remember the treaty because I had cited it in my chronicon when I found it. I couldn't believe it because that year was
I've never heard that late of a year. Did you say 2045?
Yeah, the original treaty over Hong Kong named the year 2045 is when Hong Kong will be fully back under the control of China again. But that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago when that treaty was done. But I think they gave Hong Kong back like 20 years ago or something. They didn't wait to the terms of the treaty.
Yeah, no. It was early, man, because I know that happened. It was way before that date. I mean, that's way in the future. That's wild. Did not know that. Thank you for that.
Oh, you would be surprised how many treaties mention the year 2040, 2041, 2044, and 2045.
Interesting. Interesting. I'll look into that for sure. Okay. Finally, AD 1939, World War II is funded by the Khazarian Mafia, both sides. Most people know that. In 1941, first television commercial airs, putting mind control in every home. This is now going to be the work of the beginning of the CIA. In 1945, Project Paperclip brings all the Nazi human experiment scientists to America. I cover that in my 3 Khazarian Mafia videos after the first 2. So starting with 3A to 3B and 3C on Rumble, I cover this extensively. This whole Project Paperclip, moving in the Nazis, starting NASA as a propagandist organization, and so on and so forth. In 1948, Khazarian Nazi member Alan Dulles of the Illuminati is made first CIA director. CIA director ensures no Khazarian investigations are allowed. Obviously, that's why they started the CIA, to cover what they're doing and to destroy people. And in 1953, the CIA Project MK Ultra mind control started by Dulles. And that's also what I go through in my KM videos on Rumble. In 1958, NASA, founded by Khazarian Mafia agent and Nazi propagandist Werner von Braun, as a propagandist platform to ill-inform, stupefy, and mind control the potentials of an American public who are in many involuntary MK Ultra projects like television, church revival, religious narrative control, moon fakery, drug addiction, music, Hollywood, control of outer space, and its narratives. Go ahead.
I would like to add to that.
Please.
The MK Ultra project involving NASA involved thousands of NASA employees who all believed that we were actually sending men to the moon when we weren't. And it wasn't just mind control over the public. It was also over the employees themselves. Even the astronauts were fully trained to go. They went through 2.5 years of training. They went through all the rigors. They went through the physical exercises. They went through the balloons up their butts. They went through everything, only to be told at the last minute that they're going on a ship way out here in the Atlantic, because they got to make it look like they're coming out that capsule when they pull that capsule out of the water. And that's why the very first interview with those astronauts, they looked pissed.
Didn't they?
They look pissed. They were not.
Oh, dude, it looks like someone just told them their dog died. Like they're all just down.
Yeah.
Down, staring at the ground.
They were pissed because these guys were patriotic. They were patriotic. They thought they trained. They went through real training. They went through real simulations. They really thought they were about to go. And at the last minute, the wool got pulled in their eyes and says, hey, man, this is all bullshit. We're just trying to show that we're better than the Russians. We are not going to the moon. We can't even get past the radon belt. This is every monkey, every dog, and every mouse we sent through the radon belt fried.
Yeah.
You guys ain't going nowhere. You're going out here on this ship, and you're going to act like you came out of this capsule.
Yeah.
They were pissed.
Yeah.
They were mad.
The Van Allen radiation belts. Yeah, they throw a bit of a curveball into space travel. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Russians already knew we weren't going to space. They knew it was all psyop, because they'd already fried every animal. Even Yuri Gagarin, who he never went to space, but he went to real high altitude. Even Yuri Gagarin suffered radiation sickness.
Yeah,
he went a little too high.
Yeah, intriguing, absolutely fascination. Okay, by 1963, JFK murdered by CIA under Bush Senior Illuminati. The JFK was the last president. JFK was the last president voted in by the people until 45, until Trump. In 1965 to 75, CIA attempts to use psychedelics, LSD, and psilocybin and mescaline to destroy the fabric of society and youth. And I cover all that in my Khazarian Mafia series. In 1978, the CIA controls all drugs imported and exported to and from America, sustains USA cocaine addiction and endless wars to fill private prisons with prisoners, and continue to fund the MIC with usury and drug addiction. And then I added that in 1980, the CIA uses Christianity to leverage Rothschild Israeli interests to incubate endless war philosophy and tee up religious manifest destiny. In 2001, U.S. Marines move into Afghanistan to control the poppy fields for illicit drug import for CIA to fund the MIC, and that's to basically addict the Americans. In 2001, the 9/11 Zionist operation carried out in New York to sign away American rights with the Patriot Act and arrest resistors with Homeland Security. Homeland Security was developed to cover crimes of illicit drugs in the homeland, secure child trafficking, and violate personal sovereignty rights. It was not done to help people. It wasn't done to keep people safe. It didn't have anything to do with any of that. A lot of people don't know that. But Homeland Security is not for your security. I think is this the last slide? Yeah, this is the last slide. And then I'm done. In AD 2003, Iraqi war instigated with fake W&D reports, which we all know about, generated by the Khazarian Mafia, the CIA. The CIA is basically the military arm of the Khazarian Mafia, in my opinion, and delivered to Americans by 33-degree Freemason George Bush, a black nobility member, New World Order instigator, and Babylonian Zionist. That's him right there under the yellow arrow. In 2008, the Large Hadron Collider is started in Europe to open portals to evil energies and is successful. In 2008, also Muslim Brotherhood, Freemason, and Kenyan native Barack Obama is elected president of the USA to head up the first 8 years of the 16-year plan to destroy America. And then finally, in 2016, voters outplay the Khazarian corrupt voting system and elect Trump as first non-Khazarian Mafia president since JFK. Do you think, Jay, that Trump is Khazarian in this Khazarian league, or do you think that he's not in that league? Just curious.
I have no knowledge of him actually having like Khazarian blood or even Jewish blood, but it doesn't even matter. If you're going to set up if you're going to actually set up as part of your political platform that it's very important to you that you went to Jerusalem to kiss the wall, that your daughter married into an elite Jewish family and even joined a Jewish cult. Instead of, I mean, if it's that important to you to where these are a part of your identity and who you are, and you're really, really pushing a strong Christian narrative because it taps into the conservative power base of America. It doesn't matter what his bloodline is. He's sold out. He's 100% really using American ideology against Americans, but he's really promoting the interests of a whole different culture. And yeah, we have many American Jews, but Jews have always been anti-assimilationists. They will always put themselves before they put Americans. They will always put themselves first before they put Americans. This is how they've always been.
Yeah.
This is where they are. It might be a byproduct of how they have been raised over the last thousands of years as being outsiders without a country, and always being the outsider everywhere they were. I don't know. I'm not trying to provide them justification. I just know now that all my sports industries, all my sport institutions, I know all my sports teams. I know that all the cable channels. I know that all the MGM movie studios. I know all the movie Hollywood directors. You know where I'm going with this. All the banks. I mean, if they're all owned by the same culture of people, even all the magazines, newspapers, and publishing companies, if they're all owned by the same people, then I'm done considering them as a minority. I'm done considering them as being victims. I'm done listening to people cry about how these people have been so victimized when they're the richest people in the world and they control everything. And Trump 100% does what they tell him to. So yeah, I don't even care what his bloodline is. He's absolutely for them and not Americans. I don't believe Trump is for America at all.
Okay. And so you feel that right now what's happening is we're not moving towards a higher state or higher vibration. You feel like we're kind of on a downturn, a lower vibration, and we're actually going to continue to be captured. There's not going to be any liberation. And basically society
that's a good question. It's a good question, but one does not negate the other. I believe there's an awakening, and I believe that souls are coming together. We're a family of souls. We're growing out of this darkness, but I do not believe that the world is ever going to be utopian. I can find nothing in the historical record that ever shows me there was a golden age. There was an actual Eden, a paradise. There was a time when everything was right. All I ever see is what you showed in this whole presentation, that the entire history of the world has been one psyop after another. It's always been nefarious. It's always been dark, and we've always been participants. I'm only 52 years old, but it doesn't mean I haven't been here 52 times.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Roger
I believe that we all have a modicum of God within us. But like you said in your video, in the God eaters, man, we're dealing with an absolutely spiritual, vacuous entity that is in control of this world. This is their world. This is what they signed up for. And I believe that they come back over and over and over, being the same participants. They're never going anywhere else. They signed up for this. This is their construct. This is their world. They chose that demon out of a burning bush. So they've got to live by all those Levitical, all 615 of those laws. That's theirs. Now they've created more laws on the side for justifications for themselves. But as far as the true spiritual beings that are experiencing all this, yeah, we're just passing through. You're just passing through. We all have a message, and we all resonate with different people's messages. But in the end, I'm always going to promote what I feel is true. And that is I'm moored to source. And I don't care about none of this evil shit that's going on around me. I just don't engage. I like to talk to people like you. I like to talk to people in my chat. I pull people out of my chat onto the channel with me frequently on my channel. We just do late night lives. And you know what? This is a shared experience. And there are souls, a family of souls waking up. It is a revelatory period right now. It is an apocalypse. It's an unveiling. But no, I do not see any evidence that the world is ever going to wake up. I just see a lot of evidence that many of us in the world are waking up together, which kind of tells me that our time here is growing short. I don't think this world wants people that are awake. I think it spits them out into a whole nother construct.
Outstanding. Interesting. Love that perspective. Yeah. Love that perspective. Very, very interesting. I wanted to ask you, and I've wanted to ask you for a long time now, this question. Can you help me understand, not without going into a whole 25 minutes of explanation, but can you give me a basic understanding of what was going on with the orphanages and all the children that we saw or that we see in the pictures on
Man, you're not going to like my answer to that, my brother.
No. I will. I appreciate your opinion, dude. It doesn't matter if I agree or not. I appreciate what you have to say.
I did 2 videos on the 1800s to deal with all this Tartarian narrative.
Okay.
And in those videos, I showed actual pictures of inside of manufacturing districts and factories to educate people. Most people don't have a clue just how technologically advanced we were in the 1800s and what we were building and what was common knowledge. I showed newspaper clippings and everything. I said, guys, this ain't Tartaria stuff. We were doing this. These are foundries. We were building these buildings and these ships. There's no mystery here. Now,
who was building them? The kids?
No. What I'm just talking about the general technology, this Tartarian narrative, talking about we couldn't have done all this in the 1800s, and I beg to differ.
Okay.
So when it comes to the orphanages, here's another aspect of it's a historical misunderstanding. And what I mean is that today a family may have a son and daughter. They may have 3 kids. Some families have 5 or 6 kids. But if you look in the newspapers of the time, don't go with this modern socialist reinterpretation of historical data. The newspapers of the time that I was quoting in those videos about the 1800s, the average white female in the 1870s had 9 children. There's no contraceptives. There was nothing. So I showed the government statistics that, man, women, Caucasian women, were having children out. You wouldn't believe, from the 1100s all the way to the early 20th century. Caucasian women were having 9, 10, 11 children. There are women on record who had 17 and 18 kids in their lifetime. So this all stopped around World War I. This all stopped. But this is the way it was for a long time. And man, and a family would keep 3 or 4 kids, but then they would export them. And there was all kinds of companies that existed in the 1800s that would find a job and an orphanage and a home for any kids that you weren't able to afford at home, because it wasn't American policy to not have kids. Manifest Destiny, we were trying to fill up all this Louisiana Purchase area with cities and all that, and we were building cities. And yes, child labor in the 1800s was a thing. It was a thing, but there's no mystery here.
Okay,
Kids
so it's not
kids weren't born in cabbage patches. They weren't born in cabbage patches. But when you've got 90,000 people in a community, and 22,000 of them are females that are cranking out children every single year, it's a massive population explosion is what we enjoyed in the 17 and 1800s here in the United States and in Europe. So when we see those original photos, and there's only like 70 of them, when we see those original photos of orphan trains or orphanages or factories with a bunch of kids, there's only about 70 legitimate photographs from the period that show these. A bunch of the stuff you're seeing on YouTube that shows all this narrative is AI. It's AI photographs, AI. Yeah. Even the Civil War, there's only 18 original photos from the Civil War. And that the U.S. government has on its website, and they all come from the same greenhouse where they were found, and they're damaged, and none of them show battles or wars. They're just Civil War pictures. So this is one thing that I scrutinize on my channel. There's a lot of misinformation in the field. You've got people on YouTube that are throwing shit out there. These are not legitimate photographs. These narratives are falsified. They're BS. People just aren't looking at the microfiche or looking at what were the newspapers saying at the time. It'll blow your mind to read a newspaper from the 1860s. If you were to go through newspapers of the 1860s, it will blow your mind the amount of cities they were all building all over the United States, all the industry that was going on, what the true populations of the cities were. Don't go by that shit on the internet. I have been telling people since day one, almost everything you see on the internet is bullshit. I don't even use the internet. You already know my research is sourced back from the original books and reports. The internet is toxic. Yeah. In 1990, when they made that switch from ARPANET to internet, it was with the idea of controlling information, not sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great insight. Thank you, friend. I appreciate that very much. That's the end of my presentation. So I've thrown out there hopefully some stuff that folks can follow up on and can check out for themselves. But it's much more of if folks are new here, I mean, it's much more diabolical than people realize. The world is much more diabolical than people realize. And so it's helpful to have conversation starters like this, and being able to just start to take it apart. And one of the things I love about talking to you is that you basically know about everything. And so it's really nice to help put things together.
That's not true at all.
No, it's true. You know a lot though, Jay. I mean, seriously, you've done the work, man. And you deserve the credit because you've done the work. You've read the books, you've done the research, you've done the blood, sweat, and tears to find this stuff out. So it's fantastic, man. I love having a conversation with you. It's great. And I love having my work, seen by you and you're critiquing it. That's fantastic. That's how I grow. So thank you very much.
The main takeaway here is just remember in your future presentations, I'm telling you, a lot of things will click for you once you make that association that the Judeo-Christian interpretation is that Noah was sexually assaulted by one of his sons. But if you just go by the text, you will find out in Levitical law that to see your father's nakedness actually means to sleep with your father's wife, your own mother. And this is where we get the whole Nimrod, Semiramis, the mother and child deal. This is where all that ancient Babylonian mythology comes from, because that story was famous.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. It reminds me a bit of the Oedipus complex, where the son murders his dad to marry his mother. It sounds like that complex, and that was common in the Greek mythology, which has been interesting as I've uncovered some of that. But absolutely fascinating stuff, man. I really appreciate this. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, it has been fun, but my bladder says otherwise.
Right,
because you and I started talking an hour before this show, and I had already slammed 2 cups of coffee.
And you were chugging the coffee. That's exactly right. And I'm like, wow, that guy's got to go pee.
Now it's time for me to go.
Right on, man. Thank you so much for the invitation, Jason. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, check it out. You really do. I'm telling you, you're going to like what you see. You really need to pop into our new social media, Archaix Underground. You got 7 days free. It's not even going to ask for any payment information till later on. You know, I mean, you got 7 days free.
To
Just
explore.
come in there, check it all out. Everybody in there knows you already, so there's a lot to do in there.
Thank you for sure, man. I will definitely check it out. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for the invitation. I've loved it. It's been great. Thank you.
Been great. So your links are all in the description box. I put them in there before the video, and throughout this presentation, my mods have been putting the links to your videos and stuff. So we'll do this again sometime on a different topic. It doesn't have to be Khazarian Mafia. We can talk about something else next time.
Sure, absolutely. I'm open for whatever, man. I'm happy to do it whenever you want. Thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Later.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.
That went well. That was pretty good. But I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about a whole bunch of things anymore because I am on my way to the bathroom. So I'm going to go ahead and get this let's see. Go ahead and get this if I can even figure out how to do it. I'm trying to figure out how to get my there it is. My exit video. That was great. That was a great talk. It was awesome. Very educational. But I'm going to do an underground ad and I'm going to go use the restroom. Love you guys. Welcome to the new social media for the freethinker, the platform for those who do not identify with the collective, Archaix Underground. Explore the 30-plus galleries and spaces and interact with kindred souls all over the world, some in your own community. Meet others in Errant's chat underground. See or report what's happening in your part of the world. Find others that are close to you. See services and advertise your own in Errant's personals. Chat with others and share paranormal experiences. Review the massive posts on deep and revealing movies and music that drop real secrets about our world. And look at the health and wellness posts for tips and helps on the human body. You will find hilarious and thought-provoking stuff in meme warfare. Look over and even contribute to the 2026 Isometric Analysis Project and check out the tips and post-reset pantry and survival tips. Some of you will want to join the Archaix Sentinels as we take deep dives into other content creators' paywalls and search for evidence of integrity or grifters lifting others' content. Explore the audio files of Archaix videos and watch the library of Archaix videos that are not on YouTube. Look over and download the fascinating old books of the Underground Vault Library, or dive in and read the hundreds of articles, posts, and transcripts composed in my decades of research. Review the detailed Archaix charts separated by topics easily followed, and read and contribute to the massive library of powerful quotes. You can read and post your own findings on the years 1901, 1902, and 1903 as we build the database, or look over the post in Flat Plane Examine on toroidal mechanics and simulation theory models of the world. Laugh and even contribute to lifestyles of the grifting and infamous, and post your questions that you want me to answer in live videos on YouTube. Get help with all things Archaix in the admin chat, and look over and post your own arts and crafts and talents. Look over the immense data on the Great Pyramid and Chief Cornerstone research and review book recommendations about other errants and even post your own. Check out out-of-place artifacts and mysterious history for intriguing facts about our history and world. And in Immortal Methods, see the techniques, affirmations, and practices that have worked for others in their manifestations of their wants. New spaces will be added, one being on the facts of Christianity very soon. Join us in this explosive community of souls, all sharing this experience.